Chapter 1534. Can't you speak normally? Furthermore, your face is covered in dust and black as ink. Who would be able to tell who you are? Xiaoqun could not help but roll his eyes as he grumpily said. He was about to ask Yu Xiaochuan how he suddenly appeared in the teleportation point when he saw Yu Xiaochuan take out a small mirror from nowhere and look at his face. Then he let out a cry of surprise, turned around and ran in the direction of the lake. This guy. What is he trying to do? Xiaoqun watched speechlessly as Yu Xiaochuan ran to the lake, splashed the lake water on his face and carefully washed it. He seemed to have reapplied some makeup before returning to Xiaoqun with satisfaction. Xiaoqun Appa, look again. Is my face still dirty now? Yu Xiaochuan asked shyly as he stroked his cheeks. There was a blush on his face. Oh, okay, that's it. Xiaoqun waved his hand helplessly. He really did not have the energy to complain about Yu Xiaochuan's heavy makeup. Besides, he had just escaped from the hands of the Grim Reaper and had not yet recovered. The power of the previous explosion was too strong. The shock wave brought by the sound wave not only pushed the fire of the underworld, which had not yet descended, and the biohumans on the ground more than a dozen feet away, but even Miss Luan, who was in the air, was sent flying. No matter who attacked, they were all forced back. It was a mess and they could not even stand steadily. The teleportation point connected to the Green Demonic Valley was razed to the ground by the explosion. Most of Situ Haotian's subordinates who were originally investigating nearby were vaporized by the explosion, leaving only a few broken limbs and remains, which flew into the sky and then fell in all directions. Fortunately, when the explosion happened, Xiaoqun was slightly injured and was lying on the ground, so he was able to escape the violent shock wave. Otherwise, even if he did not die, he would have been seriously injured. If Xiaoqun Appa thinks it's okay, then it's okay. Yu Xiaochuan lowered his head shyly and said embarrassedly, when I went to open Heavenly Gate, I didn't know I would meet you. Otherwise, I would have brought more advanced cosmetics. That's not important. Tell me, what level are you at now? Xiaoqun changed the topic with great difficulty. When he was observing Yu Xiaochuan just now, Xiaoqun realized that he couldn't see through this guy's level at all, so he was a little curious. Could it be that this sissy's strength was higher than his? I have no idea. Yu Xiaochuan first shook his head with a blank expression, then suddenly stuck out his tongue mischievously and said, Xiaoqun Appa, you know it too. My talent isn't as smart as yours, so my cultivation progress has always been very slow. But ever since I ate all the treasures in that valley, I feel like I've become stronger. Although I'm not as powerful as you, I think I'm almost there, hee. Forcefully suppressing the churning impulse in his stomach, Xiaoqun took a deep breath and muttered to himself, about the same as me? The energy of that explosion just now was several times stronger than my strength. This fellow was really humble. I was wondering why the treasures in the Devil Valley looked like they were eaten by wild beasts. So it was this fellow who did it? Xiaoqun Appa, what are you talking about? Yu Xiaochuan couldn't help but ask curiously when he saw Xiaoqun's constipated expression. Nothing. I'm asking you, how did you get out of the Green Devil Valley? Why was there a big explosion? Xiaoqun waved his hand and asked. Xiaoqun Appa, you're not going to that broken place, are you? Yu Xiaochuan pouted and complained angrily, you'd better not go in there. It's full of poisonous gas and there's no exit. I ran the entire valley several times and only found a few waterfalls. I couldn't find any exit. I was so angry that I blew up one of the waterfalls. I don't know what happened, but then I found myself back outside. It's amazing, isn't it? Yu Xiaochuan? Why are you here? At this time, Tang Tang, who was hiding in the woods, was also attracted by the explosion. After seeing Yu Xiaochuan, she asked in surprise, you just said that you came out of the Green Devil Valley? Then why are you still alive? Shouldn't you be poisoned to death? Hong Zhu and the other women followed behind Tang Tang. They also stared at Yu Xiaochuan as if they were looking at a monster, puzzled. Sister Tang Tang. Whoa. It's great that you're fine. Do you know? When those bad guys took you away, I was so anxious that I almost cried. If you were injured or missing, how would I explain it to Xiaoqun Appa? Later, I endured my injuries and followed them all the way. When I was hungry, I ate the dregs that they threw out from the yard and then, seeing that Tang Tang was safe and sound, Yu Xiaochuan couldn't help but cry tears of joy. He wiped his tears while recounting his recent experience. It's really hard on you? The more Tang Tang listened, the more speechless she became. Especially when she heard that Yu Xiaochuan ate all the dregs of the poisons that were thrown out, she felt nauseous. However, nausea was one thing. What surprised Tang Tang more was that this guy didn't have a body that was immune to all poisons like she did. He was not poisoned to death by so many poisons. Moreover, after entering the Green Devil Valley he was still alive, and even his cultivation had improved so much. It was simply incredible. The faces of Hongzhu and the other women were also a little ugly, but they still forcibly suppressed the uncomfortable feeling. After listening to Yu Xiaochuan's description, the women looked at each other and didn't know what to say for a while. Yu Xiaochuan's concern for Tang Tang and Xiao Chen was naturally very touching, but everything he did had a strange flavor that made it impossible for them to empathize with him. Yu Xiaochuan didn't mind the strange looks of Tang Tang and the others at all. At this moment he was most concerned about Xiao Chen's enemy. After briefly recounting his experience, he immediately pulled Xiao Chen's sleeve and asked eagerly, "By the way, Xiao Chen Appa, which bastard beat you up like this? Tell me quickly, he wants to avenge you." "It's the female spirit in the sky, but she seems to be very powerful. You have to be careful." Xiao Chen hesitated for a moment and pointed to Miss Luan who was floating in the air. Xiao Chen couldn't say that he was beaten by his father who had turned into a biohuman, could he? Otherwise, wouldn't his father become the bastard in Yu Xiaochuan's words? Miss Luan, who was sent flying by the shock wave, flew back at this moment. Just now, her attention was all on Xiao Chen, so she didn't know what the explosion was about. Chapter 1535. Miss Luan looked at Yu Xiaochuan, who had appeared out of nowhere, in astonishment. She could not be bothered with this guy who was neither a man nor a woman. She waited for the biohumans to stand up straight before ordering them to continue attacking Xiao Chen. At this time, the flame of the underworld had also returned to Xiao Chen's side. It thought that it would be reprimanded by Xiao Chen. It did not expect that not only did Xiao Chen not complain, but he even thanked it. This made the flame of the underworld feel a little flattered. "Sister Tang Tang, take Xiao Chen Appa to the side to heal his wounds. Leave this to me." Yu Xiaochuan grunted and gave a few instructions to Tang Tang. Then, without looking back, he rushed toward the biohumans who were ready to attack. Yu Xiaochuan aimed at the necks of two of the biohumans from afar and waved his hand gently. 5 thin lines vaguely flashed in the air. Then, the heads of the 2 biohumans fell to the ground with a plop. "Yu Xiaochuan, don't attack those biohumans. My father, Cheng Menjing's uncle, and Tang Tang's parents are all in there." When Xiao Chen saw this, he could not help but break out in a cold sweat. He hurriedly shouted, "We have to attack the female ghost in the air and make her turn into an atomized primordial spirit. Then we have to cooperate with my flame of the underworld to burn her. Only then can we kill her." After shouting, Xiao Chen wiped the sweat on his forehead with lingering fear. Fortunately, the 2 biohumans that Yu Xiaochuan had just killed were not his relatives. Otherwise he would have regretted it so much. If it wasn't for the fact that his family members were mixed in with the cyborgs, Xiao Chen wouldn't have been beaten to such a sorry state. "Okay, I know. Don't worry, Xiao Chen Appa. I will never attack the biohumans again." When Yu Xiaochuan received the message from Xiao Chen, he immediately nodded. He raised his eyes and stared at the primordial spirit in the sky. When Miss Luan saw Yu Xiaochuan's movements just now, she already faintly felt that something was wrong, but because his speed was too fast, she didn't have time to judge his strength. At this time, seeing Yu Xiaochuan staring at her, she immediately prepared to defend. In the blink of an eye, Yu Xiaochuan's figure suddenly exploded. Like a comet, he leaped into the air, dragging a long trail of light behind him. Then he opened his 5 fingers and directly scratched Miss Luan's face. You're already in immortal prime." Young Miss Luan was shocked and blurted out. She hesitated for a moment and was almost swept by Yu Xiaochuan's nails. Fortunately, she turned into mist in time and escaped the attack of the sharp claws. Seeing that Yu Xiaochuan and Miss Luan were fighting, Xiao Chen immediately sat down cross-legged and began to circulate his energy through his meridians. Then he said to the flame of the 9 underworlds, "Nethery, go and help Yu Xiaochuan. Find a chance to burn that nascent soul. I'll take the time to recover and then I'll help you." "Yes, master." The flame of the 9 underworlds responded and instantly disappeared into the air. The next moment, it appeared beside Yu Xiaochuan. While Miss Luan's nascent soul had yet to condense into a solid body, it rushed over with a swoosh sound. Miss Luan couldn't help but scream. She immediately condensed a solid body and floated in the air. However, her thigh was obviously blackened. It was obvious that she had been burned by the flame of the 9 underworlds. However, Yu Xiaochuan wasn't like Miss Luan, who could stay in the air for a long time. After his attack missed, he once again fell to the ground. Just as Yu Xiaochuan was about to attack again, the bioweapons who had been waiting nearby immediately surrounded him. They used all kinds of techniques to beat him up. However, after Yu Shaochuan knew the identity of these people, he didn't dare to fight back. He could only let the punches and kicks of the bioweapons fall on every part of his body like raindrops. Although these bioweapons were all at the first level of the sea-splitting stage and their punches and kicks were quite powerful, Yu Shaochuan had already broken through to the Celestial Prime Realm. His level was much higher than Xiao Chen's. Hence, he didn't care about their attacks at all. Even if they really hit his body, he wouldn't feel any pain or injury. What annoyed Yu Shaochuan the most was that every time he fell to the ground, he would be entangled by these guys. He couldn't fight back and it was difficult for him to escape. If he forcefully used his chi to shake them off, it was very likely that he would accidentally injure them. In desperation, Yu Shaochuan could only look for the occasional gap between the attacks of the bioweapons and leave the battle to deal with Miss Luan. This greatly reduced his efficiency. On the other hand, Miss Luan, who was fighting on the other side, didn't look much better. Continuing to maintain her physical state required a lot of her chi. Yu Shaochuan's sharp claws would attack her from time to time, causing her body to be injured. Miss Luan's physical state wasn't her real body. Even if she was scratched by the claws, she wouldn't bleed or break her bones. However, there would still be wounds on her body, causing her to lose some chi. Hence, every time Miss Luan was scratched by Yu Shaochuan, she had to vaporize into her primordial spirit state as soon as possible. Then she would condense a new physical state. This way the wounds on her body would heal and not lose a large amount of chi. However, the fire of the underworld was always watching from the side. Every time Miss Luan turned into a fog, it would take the opportunity to attack and burn her primordial spirit. "How dare you hurt my Xiao Chenappa? Go to hell, you stinking monster!" Miss Luan had just dodged the flames of the fire of the underworld when she heard Yu Shaochuan's angry curse coming from behind her. Then there was a tearing sound on her back. In an instant there were 10 scratches from the sharp claws. "Bastard! How dare you call me a monster? You're the real pervert!" Miss Luan couldn't dodge in time and couldn't help but curse angrily. Feeling that the wounds on her back were constantly spewing out chi, Miss Luan decisively turned into a fog and prepared to condense into a physical state again. However, before Miss Luan's physical state was completed, the fire of the underworld suddenly appeared beside her silently and quickly flew towards her primordial spirit that had turned into a fog. Yu Shaochuan tactfully retreated to avoid it so that he wouldn't be caught in the crossfire. As she couldn't move when she condensed into a physical state, Miss Luan was careless and the fire of the underworld took advantage of her weakness and burned a trace of her primordial spirit. "Ah!" Miss Luan screamed as she felt a burning pain in her stomach. She gritted her teeth and waited for the solidification to complete. Only then did she lower her head to take a look. She found that her lower abdomen had been burnt black. It looked a little scary. After fighting back and forth for a while, Yu Shaochuan and the fire of the underworld became more and more skillful. Every time Yu Shaochuan turned Miss Luan into a fog, the latter would take the opportunity to rush up and burn her. It always succeeded. Chapter 1536. Due to the damage caused by the heavenly flame to the atomized primordial spirit, the damage would also appear on the real body. So, after a few rounds, Miss Luan, who was originally thin and strong, was no longer as powerful as before. Her body was black in the east and gray in the west. She was burned beyond recognition, like an old rag doll thrown into the fire. However, even so, Miss Luan was still full of fighting power. Except for the many black spots on her body that were a little ugly, there was no difference from the beginning. She did not slow down in the fight, but became fiercer and fiercer. Her gray face was full of hostility. After another piece of skin on her but was burned by the fire of the underworld, Miss Luan was finally completely enraged. She turned into a real body and shouted, "Sissy, do you really think I'm easy to bully? Is it fun to burn me?" Yu Shaochuan did not want to be outdone. Although he was standing on the ground and being attacked by a group of biohumans, he still raised his hand and pointed at Miss Luan in the air. "I don't know whether you are fun or not, but you dare to hurt our Xiao Chenappa, you have to pay the price." "Price? I will let you know what the real price is now." Miss Luan was so angry that she laughed and said in a gloomy and dangerous tone. Before Yu Shaochuan could react, Miss Luan's energy in her body suddenly soared. While she was chanting, she drew a circle in front of her chest with her hands. A transparent round mirror covered with strange runes suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Although Miss Luan had not started to attack, there was already an overwhelming pressure pouring down from the sky. At this moment, Xiao Chen's injury had almost recovered. When he opened his eyes, he felt a suffocating momentum in the air. Looking up in surprise, Xiao Chen's face changed instantly. He immediately urged his energy and stood in front of Tang Tang and the other girls. He shouted cautiously, "Little Nethery Yu Xiaochuan, that mirror is strange. Be careful." "What's going on?" Yu Xiaochuan was looking at the mirror. Suddenly he felt that the pressure on his body had disappeared. Subconsciously looking around, he found that the biohumans that attacked him had all run away. They stood in a distance and stared at him. No one took the initiative to approach him. "This is really a little strange." "Ah. Xiaoqin, at least you still have some eyesight, but unfortunately it's too late." Young Mistress Luan laughed arrogantly. She controlled the transparent round mirror with both hands and aimed it at where Yu Xiaochuan was standing. She infused her essence into the transparent round mirror and shouted, "Sky shatter." As soon as Miss Luan shouted, the surface of the transparent round mirror suddenly flashed, and then a huge white energy pillar shot out from the mirror, like a waterfall hanging on the Milky Way, heavily smashing into Yu Xiaochuan's body. Boom. A powerful explosion instantly blasted a large crater in the ground that was originally quite flat, and it contrasted with the large crater that Yu Xiaochuan had blasted out of the jade-green demonic valley not far away. The explosion also brought about a shockwave ripple. The biohumans that had fled far away were still shaken by the shockwave. Even the wooden house was affected, and more than half of it collapsed with a crackling sound. The electronic instrument in the house was also hit by a few pieces of collapsed wood. All kinds of indicator lights on it kept flashing. Miss Luan floated over to take a few glances and found that the instrument was operating well. Only then did she feel relieved and returned to her original place. If this explosion destroyed the instrument that she had worked so hard to make, it would be a big joke. Tang Tang and the other girls, who were shaken to the ground, also stood up at this time with each other's help. They looked at the big crater not far away in horror. Fortunately, Xiaoqin stood in front of them during the explosion. Otherwise, with their weak strength, they might have been directly killed by the aftermath of the explosion. Haoyin Spiritual Mirror. I didn't expect her to find such a legendary instrument. It seems that your friend is in danger. Elder Heaven Ancestor, who had not spoken for a long time, suddenly sighed softly and said in Xiaoqian's Sea of Consciousness very solemnly, "Yu Xiaochuan." Xiaoqian's heart immediately tightened. He could not help but yell at the pit, and then ran to the big pit anxiously. As he ran, he asked anxiously in the Sea of Consciousness, "Elder Heaven Ancestor, what is that Haoyin Spiritual Mirror? Why is it so powerful?" Haoyin Spiritual Mirror. I don't know much about this instrument. If you want to investigate its origin, I'm afraid you have to go back to the time of the Yellow Emperor Shenyuan. Elder Heaven Ancestor tried hard to recall the information he had learned before. I only heard that its power can be multiplied according to the level of the user. The only thing to be thankful for is that every time this mirror releases energy, it needs to be condensed for a period of time before it can be released again. Xiaoqin calmed down a little and immediately asked, "Is there any way to destroy it before it releases again?" "Sorry. I haven't heard of any way to destroy the Haoyin Spiritual Mirror." Elder Heaven Ancestor's tone was somewhat bitter, and it was clear that he was also very helpless. Xiaoqin's heart sank and he frowned tightly. He jumped into the pit, only to see Yu Xiaochuan lying on the ground with his face facing upwards. He was already in a state of exhaling more than he was inhaling. Ignoring young Lady Luan, who was still floating in the air, Xiaoqin immediately ran over and grabbed Yu Xiaochuan's arm, continuously injecting his Yuan Qi into the Haoyin Spiritual Mirror. "Haha, Xiaoqin, I suggest that you save your Yuan Qi to escape. This abnormal guy is already dead." Young Lady Luan laughed arrogantly a few times, and continued to inject Yuan Qi into the Haoyin Spiritual Mirror. A strange balance suddenly appeared on the battlefield. Neither of them attacked. Young Lady Luan controlled the Haoyin Spiritual Mirror, while Xiaoqin used Yuan Qi to save Yu Xiaochuan. Although the two of them were doing the same thing, one was killing while the other was saving. At that moment, young Lady Luan, who was holding the Haoyin Spiritual Mirror, was in a physical state, so the flames of the underworld could not do anything to her. It could only temporarily retreat to Xiaoqian's side and wait for the next order. Xiaoqianapa. The unconscious Yu Xiaochuan suddenly felt a warmth coming from his arm, and his body's functions seemed to be gradually recovering. He opened his eyes with difficulty, and when he looked up, he found that it was Xiaoqin who was holding his arm firmly. Yu Xiaochuan could not help but blush slightly, and he said in a shy voice, "Xiaoqianapa, what are you doing to me? Feels so comfortable." Chapter 1537. Don't talk, I'm healing you. Xiaoqin did not notice Yu Xiaochuan's expression. His eyes were fixed on the Haoyin Spirit Mirror, and his hands were constantly outputting primordial qi. Since he did not know how long it would take for the Haoyin spirit mirror to condense energy again, Xiaoqun did not dare to relax for a moment. Moreover, Yu Xiaoquan's injury was too serious, and it was not suitable to move him to another place for treatment. Besides, even if he moved to another place, could he escape the bombardment of the Haoyin spirit mirror? Xiaoqun, you are so good to me, but unfortunately I am not a girl. Alas. Yu Xiaoquan spat out a mouthful of extravasated blood, shook his head with a bitter smile and muttered to himself. Xiaoqun was speechless when he heard this. He could only pretend not to understand Yu Xiaoquan's meaning and continued to speed up the treatment. Unexpectedly, Elder Heaven Ancestor suddenly warned in the Sea of Consciousness, Xiaoqun, don't play with this guy here. Use the flying sword to escape. Escape? Where else can I run to? Xiaoqun's heart was filled with sadness. He said with a bitter smile, my parents are here and Tang Tang's parents and Qing Menjing's uncle. Even if I can run away, what about them? I can't leave them alone, can I? Xiaoqun glanced at the biohuman who had just gotten up from the shock, and then looked at Qing Menjing who was tied up by ropes in the distance, as well as Tang Tang and the other girls, who had a trace of anticipation and some fear on their faces. Xiaoqun gritted his teeth, and a trace of determination flashed across his face. He clenched his fists tightly and made a decision in his heart. Are you crazy? You actually want to resist the bombardment of the Haoyin spirit mirror and create an opportunity for Yu Xiaoquan and the fire of the underworld? Even if you really succeed, you will not be able to live. Elder Heaven Ancestor could naturally know what Xiaoqun had just thought of. He could not help but gasp and had a faint ominous premonition. Could it be that you have a better idea? After Xiaoqun made up his mind, he felt a little more relaxed. He shrugged his shoulders and asked. Elder Tian was immediately at a loss for words, unable to say anything for a long time. Staring at the Haoyin spirit mirror that was constantly growing brighter, Xiaoqun felt that Yu Xiaoquan's injuries had more or less recovered. Withdrawing his yuan qi, he turned around and patted Yu Xiaoquan's shoulder. With a calm expression he said, Yu Xiaoquan, although I've cheated you many times before, this time, just treat it as if you've done something stupid again. How about helping me with a small favor? Xiaoqun Appa, what are you doing? Yu Xiaoquan's intuition was extremely sharp, and he immediately noticed that the calmness that Xiaoqun displayed seemed to be concealing a tragic emotion that was difficult to express. He couldn't help but be shocked in his heart, and he felt that something wasn't quite right. Oh, it's not a big deal. When that spirit uses her mirror to attack, I will do my best to help you block it. Then you and the flame of the underworld will directly kill her when she's unprepared. How about it? Are you sure? Xiaoqun smiled faintly and said as if nothing had happened. No. How can I let you take the risk? If something happens to you, how can I face Miss Cheng and Sister Tang Tang again? Yu Xiaoquan was suddenly startled. He quickly turned over and stood up. He grabbed Xiaoqun's arm and hurriedly said, Xiaoqun Appa, let me help you block the female ghost's attack, and then you and the flame will kill her. I can't beat her. Xiaoqun shook his head helplessly. Before he could finish his explanation, Miss Luan in the air suddenly let out a shrill laugh. Miss Luan looked at Xiaoqun and Yu Xiaoquan with a mocking face. She pointed the Haoyin spirit mirror in front of her, which had already condensed energy at the ground, and loudly mocked, Xiaoqun, it seems that you and your little friend have already accepted your fate, right? Then this queen will fulfill your wish. Don't worry, it will only be a matter of an instant. Soon you won't know anything because you will have been turned into ashes. Skybreak. Following Miss Luan's roar, the Haoyin spirit mirror's surface flashed with a bright light again. The majestic spirit gradually covered the mirror's surface. The next moment, a huge white energy column shot out like lightning again, smashing down at the position where Xiaoqun and Yu Xiaoquan were. Elder Heaven Ancestor. And Little Demon. Xiaoqun roared in the Sea of Consciousness. The primordial spirits of Elder Heaven Ancestor and Little Demon were attached to his body at the same time. Suddenly, his cultivation broke through to the peak of the heaven-breaking stage, and it was still rising. Without caring about his powerful strength at this time, Xiaoqun immediately raised his hands high, and instantly condensed a thick layer of protective cover with his spirit. Bang! The white energy column fell and smashed fiercely on Xiaoqun's protective cover. Although Xiaoqun's body had been fully controlled by Elder Heaven Ancestor, a huge impact still blasted his legs directly, and he knelt on the ground. Elder Heaven Ancestor's face was faintly pale, and he gritted his teeth to withstand the invasion of powerful energy. He only felt that the spirit in his body was rapidly draining, and even Elder Heaven Ancestor himself did not know how long he could last. Brother Xiao. Looking at Xiao Chen's struggling appearance, Yu Xiaochuan's eyes instantly became blurred, and tears flowed out uncontrollably like a spring. He could not help but stretch out his hands, wanting to help Xiao Chen share some of the damage, but just as his fingertips touched his body, he felt a tyrannical energy rush from his fingertips to his dantian, and his whole body was shaken and flew backward. Elder Heaven Ancestor used all his strength to support the protective cover and said with difficulty, Don't worry about me, quickly cooperate with the fire of the underworld. Go and kill that she-devil. Quick. An old voice came out of Xiao Chen's mouth, and Yu Xiaochuan, who fell to the side, was so surprised that he could not close his mouth. He subconsciously thought that Xiao Chen was about to exhaust his spirit and die of old age. He could not help but feel sad, and he stood up again, rushed over, hugged his thigh and shouted sadly, No. Even if I die, I want to die with Xiao Chen Appa. Ah. The attack of the Sky Shatterer immediately came over, and Yu Xiaochuan shared a part of the damage that Xiao Chen had suffered. In an instant, he felt his dantian was in so much pain that it was about to explode, but he still endured the heart-wrenching pain and hugged Xiao Chen's thigh tightly. Get lost. Yu Xiaochuan's indecisive character almost made Elder Heaven Ancestor explode with anger. In a situation where he could not move, he could only reluctantly separate a strand of spirit energy from his body to his thigh, and then he used all his strength to throw Yu Xiaochuan out of the pit and shouted, Quickly cooperate with Nethery, go and kill that she-devil. Otherwise no one will leave this place alive today. Hurry up. Unexpectedly, as soon as Elder Heaven Ancestor's voice fell, there was a crisp kacha sound, and a crack, visible to the naked eye, gradually spread out from the center of the protective cover. Chapter 1538. As the spiderweb-like cracks continued to spread, the thick protective shield finally reached the critical point where it was on the verge of shattering. Watching the white energy pillar grow larger and larger in front of his eyes, the Elder Heaven Ancestor's lips curled into a helpless smile as he slowly closed his eyes. Boom. The powerful explosion set off another wave of qi. Although Tang Tang and the other girls could not clearly see what was happening in the big pit, they immediately mobilized their yuan qi to protect their bodies after the previous encounter. However, to everyone's surprise, although they did not have Xiao Chen to help them block the attack, the power of the wave of qi was much weaker than before. They were only pushed a few meters away and did not suffer any damage. Brother Xiao. Ah. Tang Tang and the other girls had just regained their senses when they heard Yu Xiaochuan's shrill cries coming from not far away. Their hearts sank and they scrambled to their feet, running towards the big pit where Xiao Chen was. Yu Xiaochuan. What happened to Xiao Chen? Tang Tang was the first to run to the scene. The first thing she saw was Yu Xiaochuan kneeling on the ground, crying bitterly. His hands were still tightly holding a charred and smoking body. Her heart trembled violently and she shouted in disbelief. Haha, an ant trying to shake a tree. You overestimate yourself. You actually think you can block the firmament shatterer by relying on your insignificant strength? What an incomparable fool. Miss Luan's sarcastic voice came from the air, accompanied by a slight gasp for breath. After using the Haotian spirit mirror twice in succession, Miss Luan's yuan qi had been greatly consumed. She would not be able to use the spirit mirror again for some time. Husband Xiao Chen. Hong Zhu, who had stumbled over, could not help but feel anxious when he saw this. He immediately jumped into the pit to check on Xiao Chen's condition. But just as Hong Zhu stretched out his hand before he could even touch Xiao Chen's body, he felt a burning sensation on his palm, causing him to blurt out, Ouch, so hot. Tang Tang also couldn't wait to come to Xiao Chen's side. She gritted her teeth and checked his pulse despite the burning body temperature. She was immediately dumbfounded. She felt as if she had suddenly fallen into a bone-chilling ice cave, and all her beautiful fantasies collapsed in an instant. Hee, don't waste your energy. Under the attack of this Queen Sky Shatterer, Xiao Chen has already become a corpse. It's your turn now. Young Lady Luan put away the Haotian spirit mirror and slowly descended from the sky. She looked at the panicking crowd and sneered, Speak. Do you want to become my cyborg puppets, or do you want to be buried together with Xiao Chen? Dong. Dong. Hearing young Lady Luan's incomparably ear-piercing words, Yu Xiaochuan felt his heart violently contract and heavily beat twice. His dantian, which was originally in severe pain, suddenly produced a black and red aura that he had never seen before. It gradually spread to all the meridians in his body. Both Tang Tang and Hong Zhu powerlessly collapsed to the ground. They stared blankly at the charred and lifeless body on the ground. They had never thought that Xiaoqun would actually lose his life in front of them. At this moment, their hearts were filled with a feeling of helplessness. They didn't know where they should go from now on. Qing Minjing, who was in the distance, looked at them in horror. Although she could not see what was happening in the pit, young Lady Luan's voice was like a huge gong ringing in her ears. It shook her to the point that even her soul trembled. Tears involuntarily flowed from her eyes, and she felt as if the entire world had lost its color. Qing Minjing wanted to run in the direction of the pit as if she had gone crazy. However, the cyborg behind her was still firmly holding onto the chain. No matter how hard she tried, she could not move even half a step forward. Woo 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 woo. Qing Minjing wanted to scream at the top of her lungs, but all that came out were low whimpers. After struggling for a while, she powerlessly knelt on the ground. Her face was full of despair and helplessness. Nie Xiaoyu and Li Xianer's faces were also full of grief and indignation. They stared at young Lady Luan, who was full of satisfaction. They had never experienced so strongly that they were so weak and powerless in front of a powerful cultivator. After waiting for a while, young Lady Luan found that everyone in front of her was speechless. Their faces were gloomy and full of despair. It was as if they were waiting for death and could be slaughtered by her. Tisk tsk. Look at all of you. You are all in despair. Feeling the pleasure of controlling life and death, young Lady Luan proudly raised her eyebrows and said slowly, I have the ability to bring Xiaoqun back to life. However, he can only be like those cyborgs in the future. Anyway, I will just take it as raising another dog. Moreover, his ability. As she spoke, young Lady Luan suddenly froze. She felt that the situation in the pit seemed to be a little strange. She focused and looked carefully. She found that Yu Xiaoqun, who had his head lowered, was faintly emitting a black and red aura. Moreover, that aura was constantly increasing. Young Lady Luan was very puzzled. What the hell was this sissy doing? The aura on his body was too unfamiliar. It was so unfamiliar that she did not know why she began to feel a little anxious. You want to turn Brother Xiao into a cyborg? And you want to treat him like a dog. Yu Xiaoqun gently put Xiaoqun on the ground and then slowly stood up. After standing up, the black and red aura around Yu Xiaoqun's body became more intense. He completely ignored the red and swollen burn on his arm. His eyes were full of haze and violence. He walked toward young Lady Luan step by step with no expression on his face. Everyone had their own bottom line, and ever since Yu Xiaoqun cultivated the Chrysanthemum treasure book and changed his way of thinking, the person he cared about the most was Xiaoqun. For his brother Xiao, he would not hesitate to sacrifice his own life. However, before Yu Xiaoqun could sacrifice his life, Xiaoqun had blocked young Lady Luan's attack for him and Tang Tang. At this time he was lying on the ground without any vitality, motionless. Yu Xiaoqun was already devastated when Xiaoqun died in front of him. However, young Lady Luan had unscrupulously spoken rudely to his brother Xiao. This greatly touched Yu Xiaoqun's reverse scale, and finally made him really angry. When Xiaoqun was resisting the Sky Shatterer just now, Yu Xiaoqun had helped him absorb a portion of the energy. And now, under Yu Xiaoqun's rage, he had already stimulated all the potential in his body. He forcefully refined the remaining energy in his dantian. Like a person who had starved for 3 days and 3 nights, he directly swallowed the most violent and ferocious yuan qi in one gulp. Chapter 1539. Looking at Yu Xiaoqun, who was approaching her step by step, Miss Luan subconsciously took a step back. She suddenly realized what the black and red aura around his body was. She could not help but be shocked and blurted out, You actually forcefully broke through the immortal venerable realm? What kind of mental cultivation method are you practicing? What? Looking at Yu Xiaoqun, who was stronger than her at this time, Miss Luan's heart surged with a deep sense of fear. But before she could figure out the origin of all this, she felt her vision suddenly blurred, and then she caught a glimpse of 5 faint thin lines cutting through the air, sweeping towards her face. Shwa. Miss Luan didn't have time to dodge. Her physical body was instantly torn apart by the thin lines. A large amount of vitality leaked out from the torn primordial spirit. At this moment, Yu Xiaoqun had already appeared behind Miss Luan. He stared at her indifferently as if he was looking at a dead person. Traces of vitality could be faintly seen dissipating on his sharp nails. Seeing that the situation was serious, Miss Luan immediately turned into mist and floated into the air. She wanted to recondense her physical body and erase the wound just now to prevent the vitality from escaping. But before Miss Luan could successfully condense her physical body, A blue-purple flame suddenly cut through the night sky. With a burning sensation, it instantly burned and evaporated a part of her misty primordial spirit. Ah! A deep pain came from her soul. Miss Luan couldn't help but cry out in pain. She gritted her teeth and persisted in condensing her primordial spirit into a physical body. As long as it became a physical body, the primordial spirit would not be hurt. Just as she heaved a sigh of relief, Miss Luan felt that something was wrong with her chest. She slowly lowered her head and saw a slender arm filled with black and red aura had quietly pierced through her heart. At the same time, a cold voice came from behind Miss Luan. Hades' flame, don't worry about me. Immediately burn her to death. After saying that, Yu Shaochuan immediately withdrew his arm from Miss Luan's heart. Then he pulled the thin lines with both hands and quickly swept them across her body. Shwa shwa, her physical body was instantly torn into pieces. In fact, there was no need for Yu Shaochuan to give the order. The flame of the underworld had already understood that this was the most critical moment. It immediately turned around and flew back. Its body split into countless tiny bluish-purple flames and flew towards the flame of the underworld. Seeing that Yu Shaochuan and the fire of the underworld cooperated seamlessly in the air, burning Miss Luan and making her scream again and again, Tang Tang was not happy at all. She stared at the charred body lying beside her and racked her brains to recall if there were any miraculous heavenly materials and earthly treasures or supreme elixirs in the inner martial arts world or the world of cultivators that could bring Xiaoqin back to life. At this time, Hongzhu was also grief-stricken. She knelt beside Xiaoqin and cried like a pear blossom in the rain. As she cried, she suddenly remembered that after Xiaoqin was injured in the Burning Sky faction, she had met an otherworldly master who gave her some advice. At that time, Xiaoqin also had no pulse, but he was saved in the end. Thinking of this, Hongzhu held back her grief, choked with sobs, and began to pray softly, "Old Immortal, please save Xiaoqin one more time. No matter what conditions you put forward, I will try my best to fulfill them. Whether you want my body or my life, you can take it as long as you can bring Xiaoqin back to life again." Sob sob sob. Nie Xiaoyu and Li Xian stood behind Hongzhu, their faces ashen. Hearing Hongzhu's murmur, they thought that she was a little crazy because of the stimulation. Both of them took 2 steps forward and were about to comfort her when they saw a strange scene at the same time. They saw a trace of black things suddenly appear in Xiaoqian's nostrils, and it seemed to be alive, struggling with all its might. After a while, a small cloud of black fog finally emerged completely. The black fog said intermittently to the women in front of it in an extremely faint voice, Don't cry, Master is still alive. Hurry up and infuse primordial chi into him or it will be too late." "Ah, what are you? Why did you come out of Brother Zhao's body?" Nie Xiaoyu was taken aback when she saw this scene. She squatted down and looked at the black mist carefully. She felt like she had seen it before, but she couldn't remember where she had seen it before. "Little demon, and it's you? You're still alive?" Tang Tang, who had been staring at Xiaoqin, also noticed the existence of the black fog. She immediately rushed to Xiaoqin's side and asked loudly with excitement, "What did you just say? Did you want us to infuse primordial chi into Xiaoqin? Is he not dead? Don't lie to us. What's the situation with Xiaoqin now? Is he still alive?" Oh, Tang Tang was right. The small cloud of black fog was in Xiaoma's spirit, but he was also very weak at this time. Before he could speak, he was involuntarily sent flying by Tang Tang's sound waves. After hearing Tang Tang's exclamation, Hongzhu immediately widened her eyes and stopped crying. She was about to ask in Xiaoma when she saw him flying out. She quickly stood up and ran over. She carefully held his spirit in her hands and asked nervously in a low voice, "And Xiaoma, as long as you infuse primordial chi into husband Xiaoqin, will he come back to life? Is he really not dead?" "Yes, Master. Master is still alive." "Didn't you see? Even the fire of the underworld is fine?" And little demon finally stabilized his body and said with difficulty, It's the same as me. We're both primordial spirits that are residing in Master's body. If Master really dies, then we won't be able to live either. So you guys have to act quickly," and Xiaoma gasped and tried to explain. The color of the black fog was slowly fading. It could be seen that his spirit was constantly being consumed. In the end, even his voice became very weak. Fortunately, Yu Shaochuan and Miss Luan were fighting a little far away, so the women heard what he said. Hongzhu carefully put in Xiaoma back to Xiaoqian's side, and then looked at Tang Tang. Without hesitation, she reached out and put her hand on Xiaoqian's pulse and began to infuse primordial chi into him. Although Xiao Chen's body was still burning hot like a red-hot soldering iron, causing the two women's palms to turn red from the heat, they didn't mind at all. They allowed their palms to go numb from the pain. Beads of sweat rolled down their foreheads, but they still clenched their teeth and endured. Chapter 1540. When Ye Xiaoyu saw this, she squatted down and placed her hands on Xiao Chen's chest. She channeled her own energy into him. She was in a coma for so long in the Green Demonic Valley. Fortunately, Xiao Chen saved her. Now was the time to repay him. On the other hand, Li Xian'er was a little hesitant. Compared to the other girls, her cultivation was a little too low. Her yuan qi wasn't as pure and dense. However, she only hesitated for a moment before immediately placing her right hand on Xiao Chen's shoulder. She guided the yuan qi in her body slowly into Xiao Chen's meridians. At this moment, Qing Minjing, who was being watched by the biohuman, noticed something unusual in the distance. She tried her best to open her eyes and look. She found that Yu Xiaochuan was fighting with Miss Luan. Hong Zhu, Tang Tang and the others were squatting beside Xiao Chen. They seemed to be doing something to him. However, their expressions did not seem to be as sad as before. Instead, they all looked serious and solemn. Could it be that Xiao Chen was not dead yet? Qing Minjing faintly thought of this. She could not help but stand up excitedly. She wanted to take 2 steps forward to take a closer look, but she was held back by the biohuman who was at the first level of the sea-splitting stage. After struggling for a while, Qing Minjing could only stand on her tiptoes. She tried her best to observe the movements in the big pit in the distance. She silently prayed that Xiao Chen would be safe and sound. At this time in the big pit, as Xiao Chen absorbed more and more energy, the charred parts of his body gradually returned to their fair color. The women could clearly feel his body temperature slowly dropping. Although the progress was still very slow, Xiao Chen's condition was still recovering at a visible rate. This made the women happy. Hope reignited in their hearts. I can't hold on anymore. After a while, Li Xian'er retracted her hand. Her face was a little pale. She sat on the ground, and her chest rose and fell rapidly. She felt powerless after releasing a large amount of energy in a short period of time. She really could not hold on anymore. It's all right. You rest for a while and leave the rest to us. Tang Tang glanced at Li Xian'er gratefully, and then continued to concentrate on transferring Numa to Xiao Chen. She looked focused and serious. Although she didn't know how long it would take for him to wake up, at least now she knew he wouldn't die. She was really scared just now. Fortunately, before the explosion, Yu Xiaochuan absorbed a lot of energy from the Haotian spirit mirror and shared some of the damage. Master was lucky enough not to be killed by the explosion. After recovering some of his primordial energy, and Little Demon spoke much more fluently. Why hasn't he woken up yet? How much more essence chi do I need? Nye Xiaoyu asked worriedly. It was a pity that she didn't know how to refine a dead person into a netherworld cultivator. Otherwise, it would be nice to let Xiao Chen become a netherworld cultivator like her. Maybe Master's heart has stopped beating for too long so he can't wake up for a while. And Little Demon floated over Xiao Chen's body and said seriously, fortunately his brain is not damaged, so if we want him to wake up, we must find something to stimulate his heart to resume beating. If only there was a pacemaker used in the hospital. Where can we find a pacemaker in such a desolate place in such a short time? Tang Tang's face changed and she blurted out worriedly, besides, it's hard to say if there is such a thing in the cultivation world. Hong Zhu's heart clenched as he racked his brain in deep thought. His beautiful and charming eyes scanned his surroundings to see if there was anything suitable for him. Coincidentally, he happened to catch a glimpse of Bai Zai's gloating spirit beast, who was standing not too far away. Suddenly, an idea struck him and he shouted, "That big white horse over there, come here for a moment." Baize put away its smile, raised its left front hoof and pointed at its nose in confusion. Seeing Hong Zhu nodding, it couldn't help but say angrily, "What big white horse? I've said it several times, I'm a high-level spirit beast, do you know that? Don't lower yourself to that low-level beast's level. Besides, I don't have the ability to save this kid, so you'd better give up. Why are you talking so much? If I tell you to come over, then come over, or I'll let you shout you and tear you into pieces first." Tang Tang also raised her head, glared at Baize and threatened. Although Tang Tang still didn't know what Hong Zhu was up to, it seemed that she was confident that she could wake Xiao Chen up, so she cooperated with Hong Zhu very tacitly. "Tsk, come, what's the big deal?" Hearing Tang Tang's threat, Baize couldn't help but shiver. Obviously it was a little afraid of Yu Xiaochuan. It curled its lips and drooped its face and reluctantly moved towards Hong Zhu. Once the wizard spiritual beast arrived in front of the women, Hongzhu pondered for a moment before he asked with a hopeful look on his face, "I heard from Xiao Chen that when he was struck by lightning in the Honor One secret realm, you were the one who guided the electricity out of his body? Do you still have any electric current in your body now? If you do, quickly release it and stimulate his heart." This was something Hongzhu had heard while chatting with Xiao Chen when he had just entered the immortal cultivation world. In the end, when he saw the Bei's spirit beast, he suddenly remembered it. He just didn't know if it could be of any use. "You're crazy. How long has it been?" "How could I?" Bei's rolled its eyes and said snappily. However, before it could finish, Tang Tang's eyes suddenly lit up and she interrupted it. "If you don't have it, then forget it. There's an electronic device in that wooden hut, and it should be powered by a battery. Go there now and bring me the remaining unused battery." Bei snorted, and just as it was about to coldly refuse this unreasonable request, it saw Tang Tang unhurriedly pointing at Yu Shaochuan, who was fighting with Miss Luan in the sky and emitting a black and red aura. What the hell? Humans are so despicable. Bei's refusal was stuck in its throat, and it could only grit its teeth as it ran towards the wooden hut, constantly cursing Tang Tang and the women in its heart. Hongzhu pursed his lips into a smile. Because both of his hands were busy transferring primordial qi to Xiao Chen, he couldn't give a thumbs up, so he could only blink at Tang Tang to express his praise. Tang Tang's lips also curled into a sly smile. She was also very happy when she thought that Xiao Chen wouldn't lose his life and leave her. Li Xianer saw that she couldn't be of much help here, so she simply followed the Baizhe spirit beast and went into the wooden house to search for a while. Finally, she found an intact battery. Then she took a few wires and asked the Baizhe spirit beast to carry them back. Chapter 1541. After returning, Li Xianer quickly connected the wires. At this time, the wounds on Xiao Chen's body had been completely healed by the recovery of Yuan Qi. The women withdrew their hands that were transferring Yuan Qi and looked worriedly at Xiao Chen, who was still unconscious with his eyes closed. Tang Tang picked up a wire in each of her hands. She turned her head around and exchanged a glance with Hongzhu and the other girls. Then she carefully and gently brought the sparking wire to Xiao Chen's heart. Bang! The electric current instantly poured into Xiao Chen's body. His body suddenly twitched a few times and then immediately calmed down. Tang Tang cautiously put the wire aside. Hongzhu could not wait to turn his head and lean on Xiao Chen's chest to listen for a while. A relaxed smile gradually appeared on his face, and a big stone in his heart was finally lifted. "Oh, I'm still alive?" Under the nervous and eager gaze of the women, Xiao Chen's eyelashes moved gently, and he slowly opened his eyes. Looking at the familiar and kind faces of Tang Tang and the other women, a smile appeared on his face. In fact, at the moment of the explosion, Xiao Chen's primordial spirit had already been stored in the Sea of Consciousness by the Elder Heaven Ancestor, and his body was still controlled by the Elder Heaven Ancestor, so he did not know how his injuries were, and whether he had been blown to pieces or not. After floating anxiously in the Sea of Consciousness for a while, Xiao Chen suddenly found that Xiaoma was still alive, but its breath was very weak. He quickly deduced the current situation, and ordered it to come out and remind Tang Tang and the others. Originally, Xiao Chen wanted to come out and comfort them himself, but the protective barrier set up by the Elder Heaven Ancestor was too strong. He could not figure out how to penetrate it, so he could only send in Xiaoma, who could come and go freely. Fortunately, although it was very weak, it still successfully completed the task. Because he did not know the situation outside, after Xiaoma went out, Xiao Chen could only wait anxiously in the Sea of Consciousness. Fortunately, Tang Tang and the others did not let Xiao Chen wait too long. When his body was completely repaired by the Yuan Qi, the barrier set up by the Elder Heaven Ancestor was automatically lifted, and Xiao Chen took over his body. "Husband Xiao Chen. Ooh, you're finally okay. I thought I would never see you again." "That's great." Seeing that Xiao Chen had woken up, Hongzhu could not help but burst into tears of joy. He rushed up and hugged Xiao Chen, kissing his face madly, making his face also full of tears and saliva. Tang Tang was a little more reserved. Although she was also very excited, she did not use both hands and mouth like Hongzhu. She just stood quietly at the side with a faint smile on her face, looking affectionately at Xiao Chen's handsome face that was still faintly pale. In the distance, Cheng Minjing witnessed all of this, and when she heard Hongzhu's cheers, the tears that had already stopped flowing once more. She felt that she had really gone crazy. Wasn't he just a little follower? In such a short period of time she had experienced so many ups and downs. Qing Minjing silently said to herself. Fortunately, Xiaoqin is fine this time, otherwise I will definitely curse his corpse for 3 days and 3 nights. I'm still alive and well, how can I leave her first as an attendant? Good girl, I'm fine. Thank you for healing me. Xiaoqin stroked Hongzhu's hair and comforted her. After that, he sat up and looked at the sky, asking in his spiritual sea, "Oh right, Elder Heaven Ancestor, why did you Xiaochuan suddenly become like this? It's like she's a different person. That Luan girl is too troublesome. Even Nethery couldn't burn her to death." Yu Xiaochuan and Miss Luan were still hovering in midair, fighting each other like two lunatics. The 9 nether flame was also burning Miss Luan's nascent divinity with all its strength, sometimes even dragging Yu Xiaochuan into the fire. So, I never thought that after several thousand years, this Luan girl is still so powerful. Elder Heaven Ancestor's feeble voice came from his spiritual sea. I guess Yu Xiaochuan thought you were dead, so in a fit of anger, he turned into the dark state. Elder Heaven Ancestor had been in a dormant state because of the previous explosion. Fortunately, when Tang Tang and the other girls sent energy to Xiao Chen's body, he also absorbed a small part of it, so he woke up from his dormant state. However, at this time, his nascent divinity was still very weak. Dark state? What do you mean? Xiao Chen was a little confused, so he asked, did he forcefully break through to a higher level? Yes, burning his own life in exchange for a temporary increase in strength. I remember in the Chrysanthemum scripture, there is such a method that harms others without benefiting oneself. Elder Heaven Ancestor's voice suddenly became a little low, but I'm afraid he won't be able to hold on for long. 9 nether flame. You attach yourself to me, let's kill this female devil together. Yu Xiaochuan's hoarse voice suddenly came from the sky. Xiaochun looked up, only to find that the black and red aura around Yu Xiaochuan's body was gradually weakening, and his beautiful black long hair was gradually turning white. His red cheeks even had wrinkles that shouldn't be there at this age, and it was obvious that he was rapidly aging. No. Without the master's order I can't. Before 9 nether flame could finish its words of refusal, suddenly felt that it had been held in Yu Xiaochuan's hand, and could not help but exclaim, "Ah! Let go of me or you will be burned to death. Don't talk nonsense, Brother Xiao is dead, what's the point of me living? Quickly attach yourself. Do you hear me?" Yu Xiaochuan endured the burning pain from his palm and roared hysterically. The master didn't? Just as the netherworld flame was about to say that Xiao Chen was still alive, it didn't expect the surrounding environment to suddenly become pitch black. After being stunned for a moment, it realized that it had already been swallowed by Yu Xiaochuan. Ah! Yu Xiaochuan forcefully swallowed the flames of the underworld into his body, and immediately felt a scorching aura madly burning his body from the outside to the inside, and from the depths of his dantian, a bone-piercing chill involuntarily spread out, eroding his meridians. Yu Xiaochuan's skin gradually turned from tender and soft to charcoal-like black, and then was burned to ashes in a bluish-purple flame. However, his teeth were trembling uncontrollably, and his whole body felt as if it was a mixture of ice and fire, intertwining with cold and heat. You're crazy. Seeing Yu Xiaochuan completely surrounded by bluish-purple flames, and at the same time, his body was constantly emitting a black and red aura, Miss Luan's expression finally changed. With a face full of fear, she immediately took out the Haotian spirit mirror, and used all her strength to crazily send her remaining Yuan Qi into the mirror. Chapter 1542. As she had been entangled by Yu Xiaochuan and the 9 underworld flames, young Mistress Luan could not find an opportunity to conjure the vast sky spirit mirror. Furthermore, she did not have the protection of the crystal barrier and was constantly being burned by the 9 underworld flames, so her essence energy was constantly being drained. She did not wish to use the vast sky spirit mirror to attack. However, Yu Xiaochuan's crazy behavior had already made Miss Luan feel a deep fear from the bottom of her heart. She could not care about energy consumption and could only give it her all. Ha 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 ha. Is this the power of the Hades hellfire? Yu Xiaochuan struggled for a while with a painful expression. Finally, he gradually adapted to the negative effects of the Hades hellfire. He laughed wildly and suddenly raised his head to look at Miss Luan expressionlessly. His eyes flashed with a bluish-purple light. His figure flashed and he quickly rushed toward Miss Luan while shouting, "Go to hell!" Miss Luan was completely shocked. She did not expect Yu Xiaochuan to be able to merge with the Hades hellfire so quickly. However, the Haotian spirit mirror had not finished charging yet. Seeing that Yu Xiaochuan's sharp claws were getting closer and closer, Miss Luan could only give it her all. She gritted her teeth and aimed the mirror in front of Yu Xiaochuan. Sky shatter. A bright light flashed on the surface of the Haotian spirit mirror. Before the white energy beam could be launched, a crisp kacha sound was heard. The mirror was mercilessly pierced through 5 holes. Then Yu Xiaochuan's sharp nails stretched out from the other side. What? Seeing the Haotian spirit mirror shatter into pieces of glass, the originally flickering mirror gradually lost its light. The energy that was originally injected into the mirror was also constantly flowing back. Miss Luan was dumbfounded and did not know what to do in the air. Originally, killing a bitch like you was not enough to make up for Brother Zhao's life. However, you are too despicable. Since I can't live now, let's just die together. Yu Xiaochuan sneered and shouted with all his might. Then he opened his arms and hugged Miss Luan tightly. He planned to use the Hades hellfire to burn her alive. Let go of me, you pervert. Ah. Miss Luan did not expect Yu Xiaochuan to directly hug her. She immediately screamed and struggled to break free. You bad woman, you dare to kill my brother Xiao, you must pay the price. Are you afraid? Miss Luan's panicked cries made Yu Xiaochuan reveal a disdainful expression. He felt that this woman must have lost her sense of propriety in her panic and didn't know what to do. Subconsciously lowering his head to look at the ground, Yu Xiaochuan was pleasantly surprised to find that Xiao Chen was not dead and had already woken up. He was looking up at the battle situation on his side. Yu Xiaochuan immediately heaved a sigh of relief, but his hands did not loosen. Instead, he hugged Miss Luan even tighter. Yu Xiaochuan clearly knew that he couldn't let go. If he let Miss Luan break free from his control, who knew if this demoness would suddenly attack again and do something harmful to Xiao Chenappa? No matter how hard Miss Luan struggled, she was still hugged by Yu Xiaochuan like an iron hoop. She couldn't get rid of him at all. Shocked and angry, she gritted her teeth and said, "Good, very good. Since you won't let me live, I won't let you have it easy either. If we're going to die, then we'll all die together. Anyway, there are so many people who will die with us, so I won't lose anything." What did you say? Originally, Yu Xiaochuan thought that Miss Luan had broken down, but when he heard her vicious words, the expression on his face immediately became a little dignified. What was this woman trying to do? Oh no, it seems like Miss Luan wants to perish together with us. Elder Heaven Ancestor suddenly shouted in Xiao Chen's sea of consciousness. Elder Heaven Ancestor could clearly feel that the aura emitted by Miss Luan's spirit had suddenly become stronger than before. Moreover, it was constantly flickering with a red light, giving off an extremely dangerous feeling. What do you mean? Wasn't she about to be burned to death by Yu Xiaochuan? Could it be that she still has the power to turn things around? Xiao Chen was also sensitive to Miss Luan's strange behavior, but he didn't understand what it meant. Hearing Elder Heaven Ancestor's words, his brows instantly furrowed. The spirit of a top cultivator has already cultivated to the point where it can be released and retracted at will. Even if it is controlled, it has a self-destruction mechanism. Right now, it seems like the 9 underworld's flame can't burn her to death in a short time, so she can choose to self-destruct. If she really succeeds, not only Yu Xiaochuan and Nethery, I'm afraid that everyone here will not be able to survive. Elder Heaven Ancestor said with a serious tone. Is there no other way to stop her from self-destructing? Although Xiao Chen asked, he didn't have any hope in his heart. His eyes were fixed on Yu Xiaochuan and Miss Luan, who were hugging each other in the sky. A feeling of powerlessness welled up in his heart. Sigh. Elder Heaven Ancestor shook his head and didn't answer directly. However, from his sigh, Xiao Chen heard a deep sense of helplessness. Yu Xiaochuan. Quickly let go of that spirit, she's about to self-destruct. Xiao Chen endured the pain in his body, stood up with the help of Tang Tang and Hong Zhu, and shouted at Yu Xiaochuan. Hearing Xiao Chen's call, Yu Xiaochuan suddenly turned his head to look at Miss Luan, only to see a trace of an evil smile hanging on the corner of her mouth. She was still mumbling something and her body was also emitting a dark red light. Not only did her skin become extremely hot, but the surrounding temperature was also rising. 9 underworld's flame, hurry up and burn this demoness to death. Otherwise, Brother Xiao and little sister Tang will also suffer. Yu Xiaochuan immediately urged anxiously. Then he tried to urge the remaining black and red aura in his body to completely envelop himself and Miss Luan. He hoped to use this to defend against Miss Luan's self-destructive energy, so as to avoid hurting the others on the ground. No way. I've done everything I can, and now this guy's spirit is about to explode. How about you run away? The 9 underworld's flame was also very anxious. Miss Luan's spirit was too powerful, and it had been desperately burning it, but it still couldn't speed up. At this time, the 9 underworld's flame could clearly feel that this spirit was emitting a very dangerous aura, but it was helpless to do anything. No, I can't run away. Otherwise, Brother Xiao and the others will be finished. Yu Shaochuan flatly refused. After pondering for a moment, he gritted his teeth and quickly said, 9 underworld's flame, use all the energy you have to send me and this demoness to a higher place. She must want to blow us up now. Brother Xiao has finally come back to life, and I can't let him suffer any more harm. Chapter 1543. The flame of the underworld immediately understood Yu Shaochuan's meaning. Together with him, they gathered their spiritual power at the soles of their feet and quickly flew up into the sky. Miss Luan also realized that she was climbing up. Unwilling to give up, she made a prompt decision to activate her Yuan Qi. She said fiercely, "Ha, looks like you're not too stupid. Unfortunately, it's too late for you to realize this. Now all of you can die." In the sky, Miss Luan's spiritual power suddenly burned and emitted a bright red flame. Soon, it merged with Yu Shaochuan and the flame of the underworld. Brother Xiao, I finally did something big for you. In my next life I must be a woman. Yu Shaochuan hugged Miss Luan tightly and shouted at the ground in an extremely mournful voice. However, before Yu Shaochuan could finish, a strong explosion drowned his voice in the night sky. Yu Shaochuan. Xiao Chen clenched his fists in grief and indignation as he watched the strange blue, purple, black, and red light shoot straight into the sky. He roared with all the strength he had left in his body. As soon as Xiao Chen's voice fell, a white light flashed in the sky. The strange and colorful flame directly exploded. A powerful shock wave set off a fierce whistling wind, rushing straight down from the sky. For a time, the dust on the ground was flying, and the dust and gravel were raised to the height of a person. It was almost impossible to see anything clearly. After a long time, the dust and sand in the air finally settled. Xiao Chen and the rest climbed out of the huge pit with great difficulty. They shook off the thick layer of dirt on their bodies and raised their heads to look at the empty and boundless night sky. Every one of them sighed in their hearts. I didn't expect Yu Shaochuan to sigh. After a long silence, Tang Tang let out a long sigh. She couldn't continue her sentence. In fact, Tang Tang didn't like Yu Shaochuan very much. She used to feel that this person was very sinister and hypocritical. Later, after he practiced the Chrysanthemum Treasure Book, he became a little abnormal. He even fell in love with Xiao Chen. This made it difficult for her to accept. She just felt that he was a little pitiful. But he never thought that in this life-or-death situation, Yu Shaochuan would actually become so decisive. He would rather sacrifice his own life to protect Xiao Chen and the others. This action made Tang Tang have an indescribable complex feeling toward Yu Shaochuan. She didn't know whether it was gratitude or sadness, and her heart felt heavy and a little uncomfortable. That's right, but Yu Shaochuan choosing to do this might be a form of release for him. Xiao Chen shook his head and sighed bitterly. Actually, how could Xiao Chen not understand Yu Shaochuan's intentions? But he really couldn't accept it, so he usually pretended not to understand. Yu Shaochuan was probably very clear about this in his heart, so he resolutely chose such an ending for himself. Li Xianer felt that her eyes were a little moist. She raised her head and blinked her eyes. Suddenly she was slightly startled. She rubbed her eyes and looked carefully. She pointed to the sky and shouted, "Huh? Look, what's that over there?" Xiao Chen and the others looked in the direction that Li Xianer pointed. At first glance they didn't find anything. But when they looked carefully, they noticed that there was a faint bluish-purple light was slowly falling, like a small firefly, consciously floating toward where they were standing. Nethery? Xiao Chen subconsciously reached out his hand and caught the faint bluish-purple light. Suddenly he felt a burst of warmth coming from his palm, but also a trace of coolness. It was a very familiar feeling. Xiao Chen, if I'm not wrong, this should be a part of Nethery's primordial spirit. Elder Heaven Ancestor said with a sigh, the power of the explosion was too great. I'm afraid even it couldn't survive. Look, there are so many more. It looks like it's snowing, but the color is a little strange. Nie Xiaoyu quietly looked at the sky, her eyes sparkling as she said with a smile. Xiao Chen quickly raised his head to take a look. Indeed, he saw a large number of fluorescent lights floating down from the sky. Some were bluish-purple, some were blackish-red, and there was a small portion that was red. They were all mixed together and it looked beautiful but poignant. Not long after, the sprinkling fluorescent lights covered the area where Xiao Chen and the others were, as well as the lake and the forest around the wooden house. Moreover, after they landed, they would not disappear for a short period of time. They just floated above the grass and the water, emitting a faint light. Elder Heaven Ancestor, if we collect all of Nethery's primordial spirit, can we resurrect her? Xiao Qin gently held the bluish-purple light in his hand and asked in his sea of consciousness. I'm not too sure. Elder Heaven Ancestor hesitated for a while, but he still said, but you can try. Just don't have too much hope. As long as there's a glimmer of hope, I won't give up. Xiao Qin immediately said resolutely, Nethery and you Xiaochuan have sacrificed their lives for us. I have to do something for them. If you collect the 9 Nether Flames primordial spirit, maybe I can try to help it recover, but... Elder Heaven Ancestor paused, then said bitterly, Yu Xiaochuan is just an ordinary person. Even if he becomes a cultivator, he won't be able to come back to life after being blown to pieces. Xiaochuan was stunned for a while. Although he didn't want to believe it, he understood that what Elder Heaven Ancestor said was true. Yu Xiaochuan really couldn't come back to life. You'd better hurry up and collect the 9 Nether Flames primordial spirit. If you wait too long, I'm afraid these fluorescent fragments will disappear. Elder Heaven Ancestor saw that Xiao Qin didn't move, so he had to urge, the bluish-purple fluorescent is the 9 Nether Flame, and the blackish-red should be Yu Xiaochuan's primordial spirit. As for the red ones, you know. Well, it's that she-devil surnamed Luan, right? Xiao Qin nodded and explained to Tang Tang and the others. Then he began to collect the bluish-purple fluorescent and took the initiative to extinguish the red fluorescent. As for Yu Xiaochuan's primordial spirit, Xiao Qin didn't know how to deal with it. He could only let it float in the air, waiting for it to slowly disappear. Tang Tang and the others listened to Xiao Qian's instructions. They first went to get rid of the rope artifact tied to Qing Menjing so that she could regain her freedom. Then they would help to collect the 9 Nether Flames primordial spirit. Because there were many fluorescent fragments and their sizes were not the same, and the area was very wide, Xiao Qian and the others tried to collect them for a long time, but they still couldn't collect them all. Chapter 1544. Xiao Qin, my uncle, your father, and Tang Tang's parents have all fainted over there. Are they okay? Qing Menjing handed the bluish-purple fluorescence she collected to Xiao Qin, then pointed to Qing Zhongqian and others who were lying motionless not far away and asked worriedly. When Tang Tang and the others helped Qing Menjing untie the rope just now, they had told her everything that happened here. Qing Menjing was also filled with emotions, but the modesty of a young lady still made her resist the urge to run over and hug Xiao Qin, trying to calm herself down. Well, don't worry, they were all controlled by that female devil before. Now that the guy surnamed Luan has been turned into ashes, they will no longer be controlled by others. Xiao Qin nodded with a smile and said, and I have just discharged the biochemical medicine from their bodies and carefully examined them. There is nothing serious and they may wake up in a while. Although he was busy collecting fluorescence, Xiao Qin naturally would not forget to rescue his parents and other biohumans. After all, he came to the immortal cultivation world for this matter. Xiao Feng, Qing Zhongqian, and Tang Tang's parents all had the biochemical medicine injected by Miss Luan in their bodies. Xiao Qin used his primordial qi to expel the medicine from their bodies, and then combed their bodies. He found that they were still very healthy in all aspects, except that their minds were a little fuzzy, and there were no hidden problems. Xiao Qin's mother was injected with a drug that kept her in a coma. Because she was unconscious for a long time, lying motionless in the crystal box, her body was relatively weak. It took Xiao Qin a lot of effort to adjust his mother's body to the best state. By the way, Xiao Qin, go and see how the materials in the electronic instrument are. Seeing that Xiao Qin had properly solved his own problems, Elder Heaven Ancestor could not help but remind him. Oh, right. At this moment, Xiao Qin's physical strength had almost fully recovered. Hearing this, he immediately turned around and ran towards the collapsed wooden house. When he passed by Situ Haotian and Situ Qitian, he found that both of them were unconscious, lying in a pool of blood without any signs of life. Xiao Qin glared at them angrily and instructed in Xiaoma to stay and watch them in case anyone suddenly woke up and made trouble. Then he hurriedly walked into the wooden house. Walking to the front of the electronic device, Xiao Qin found that it was no longer operating. It seemed that it was hit by the collapsed roof during the explosion just now. There was no movement at all at this time. Why isn't this machine moving? Could it have been smashed by a piece of wood? Qing Menjing and the other women also followed Xiao Qin and walked in. Looking at the complex program and the sparking operation interface, as well as the slightly damaged and cracked LCD display, they frowned. Hongzhu asked with a worried look. This thing is too complicated. Even I can't understand it. It seems that I need to find a programmer. Xiaoqun studied it for a long time and was still confused. If there was a manual or something he could at least learn it with the super ability of a cultivator, but there was nothing at the moment. He could only stare at the instrument. Let me try. Li Xianer volunteered to walk in front. She usually liked to play with some novel electronic instruments and had some concept of these things. Looking at the operation interface carefully, Li Xianer carefully pressed a green button on it and then another yellow button, but after waiting for a while the machine did not respond. It seems to be different from the things I usually do. Seeing that the machine failed to start, Li Xianer's face also collapsed, and she said dejectedly. Xiaoqun shook his head helplessly and simply asked in the sea of consciousness, Elder Heaven Ancestor, do you know how to operate this thing? How could I know this? Elder Heaven Ancestor was depressed for a while and suggested, you'd better ask Situ Haotian. I saw him fiddling with it before. That's a good idea. Xiaoqun nodded and shouted outside the house, and Xiaoma, wake up Situ Haotian who has a broken hand and then bring him here. Yes, master. Jia. And Xiaoma let out a strange laugh. No one knew what he did to Situ Haotian, only to hear a scream outside, and then the pale Situ Haotian was pushed in by Xiaoma. Looking at the flustered Situ Haotian, Xiaoqun snorted coldly, pointed to the electronic instrument and said, How do you operate this machine? Tell me the method, maybe this young master will be in a better mood, and I will spare your dog life. This instrument. Situ Haotian was pushed by Xiaoma again and stumbled to the front of the instrument. After looking at it for a while, he seemed to have an idea in his heart. He rolled his eyes and wanted to use it to get some benefits for himself. You'd better not think about anything, or I will send you directly to your master. Xiaoqun was keenly aware of Situ Haotian's careful thoughts and spoke coldly before he could speak. Let me think, it seems to be like this. Situ Haotian's budding hope was extinguished by Xiaoqun again. His face could not help but be a little gray, but he had no power to resist. He could only use his only remaining hand to press a few times on the keyboard. Rumble. As soon as Situ Haotian finished pressing, the electronic instrument suddenly made a few muffled sounds, and then the material inside quickly dissolved and began to create a body model. Everyone stared at the electronic instrument closely, and no one noticed that the fluorescent light floating around the wooden house was gradually drawn into it and mixed into the body. Wait, isn't this a woman's body? Hurry up and reset it to a man's body. Xiaoqun unintentionally raised his head and glanced at the LCD screen. Only then did he realize that it was clearly displaying an enchanting woman with an enchanting personality. Moreover, she was very beautiful. Even compared to Cheng Menjing, she was not inferior. I didn't do it on purpose. This body was originally prepared for Miss Luan. Situ Haotian spread out a hand helplessly and said, Now that it has entered the manufacturing process, there is no way to reset it. Motherf *her. Then stop this thing first. Before Xiaoqun could finish his words, Elder Heaven Ancestor's urgent voice came out of his sea of consciousness. No, don't stop it. Otherwise, the purple mist black lotus powder inside will be completely wasted. Old Sky, you're not serious, are you? This is a woman's body, you really want to use it? Or are you just going to make do with it? Xiaoqun stopped and asked in a strange tone in his sea of consciousness. Chapter 1545. Although Xiaoqun did not discriminate against the Elder Heaven Ancestor's gender in real life, the thought of an old man's soul living in the body of a beautiful young woman made him feel a little strange. The Elder Heaven Ancestor was also speechless for a while, and his heart was extremely tangled. In any case, he was also an influential figure in the past. After waiting for so many years, he finally had a good disciple. After going through many difficulties and obstacles, he could finally have his own body, but in the end, it was a woman's body. This was the final step. Should he take it or not? No matter what, it would make him feel uncomfortable and panicky. Ding! A crisp sound suddenly broke the deadlock. It turned out that the body inside the electronic device had been completed. However, to everyone's surprise, this body, which should have no soul, suddenly opened its eyes and moved on its own. It carefully opened the glass container and walked out. Xiaoqun was just about to ask the Elder Heaven Ancestor about his decision, but seeing this scene he was also dumbfounded. Even the Elder Heaven Ancestor did not seem to have expected this situation, and was shocked speechless. I don't seem to be dead. The female body opened her cherry lips and said in an incomparably pleasant voice. Then she carefully looked at her own curves and nodded with a face full of joy. It seemed that she was very satisfied with this beautiful body. Thank the heavens, Master. You are finally resurrected. Situ Haoyan's eyes instantly burst with a look of ecstasy. With a plop, he knelt in front of the female body, then held her toes and lowered his head to kiss her. At this time Xiao Chen's expression was extremely solemn. He quietly and slowly stepped back, shielding Qing Minjing and the other women behind him. His mind was rapidly thinking, why did Miss Luan come back to life? In a flash, Xiao Chen suddenly remembered that when he was creating the body just now, some of the fluorescent light floating in the air seemed to be involved in it. At that time he did not care about it. Could it be Miss Luan's soul benefited from the disaster and re-entered this body? But Xiao Chen clearly remembered that he had tried his best to extinguish the red light, so such a thing should not have happened. Go away. Who the hell is your master? I am Xiao Chen Appa's person in life, and I am Xiao Chen Appa's ghost in death. What made everyone's jaws drop once again was that before Situ Haoyan kissed her toes, the female body cursed and directly kicked him away. Following the loud bang, Situ Haoyan crashed into the corner of the collapsed wooden house. The female body was like a swallow returning to its nest, and quickly threw herself into Xiao Chen's arms, like a swallow returning to its nest. She said coquettishly, Xiao Chen Appa, my wish has finally come true. I don't want to be separated from you ever again. Situ Haoyan faced the female body, his eyes opened wider than balls, and his throat rolled a few times. He wanted to say something but he could not say anything. With a face full of resentment and grievance, he breathed his last. Qing Minjing and the other women present were dumbfounded, and Xiao Chen was also stunned on the spot. He moved his body a little uncomfortably, and when he heard the familiar title blurted out by the female body, he subconsciously asked, "That? You are not Yu Shaochuan, are you?" "Of course not," the female body coquettishly said. Qing Minjing and Tang Tang looked at each other, already a little numb. In this short period of time they had been shocked a little too much and now they were almost used to it. Xiao Chen was stunned, and just as he was about to open his mouth to ask, he heard the female body continue to say, Yu Shaochuan is dead and I should be reincarnated now. Besides, this time I have become a real woman, how can I still be called Yu Shaochuan? I must change my name to Yu Xiaojiao. Or Yu Jiaojiao or Xiao Chen Appa, which one do you think sounds better? I'll listen to you. After Yu Shaochuan said shyly, she even raised her head and winked at Xiao Chen. Well, Xiao Chen could not help but shudder, unable to say anything for a moment. Although the beauty in his arms was as good as Jean Beibei's, and her face was as beautiful as Qing Minjing's, the moment he thought that Yu Shaochuan was living inside her body, Xiao Chen could not arouse any interest in her at all. Cough cough. Qing Minjing cleared her throat and couldn't help but roll her eyes again. She picked up a dusty coat from the ground and handed it over. Then she opened her mouth and said, Hey you, Xiaojiao is it? This is a public place. Can't you pay attention to your image? Also, I think you'd better put on some clothes first. What do you look like if you are naked? Yes. Sister Minjing is absolutely right. It's all my fault that I was too excited. I'm really sorry. Yu Xiaojiao exclaimed and hurried to take the coat from Qing Minjing's hand. She covered her delicate body with it and stuck out her tongue, blushing. She stared at Xiao Chen with a smile as if she could not get enough of him. Why don't we send my parents, Uncle Cheng and Tang Tang's parents to the sky-burning sect for treatment first? Xiao Chen avoided Yu Xiaojiao's eyes unnaturally. Taking a deep breath, he proposed, The sky-burning sect is my territory. It will be more convenient for me to use heavenly materials and earthly treasures or human resources. After they are fully recovered, we will figure out a way to leave the world of immortal cultivators together. Yu Xiaojiao's loving eyes made Xiao Chen's hair stand on end. He wanted to leave here immediately and keep a certain distance from Yu Xiaojiao first. Xiao Chen, I really felt that it was very difficult to make this decision before. I've been struggling whether to go into that female body or not. Now I can finally breathe a sigh of relief. Elder Heaven Ancestor finally said with relief, From now on, I'd better stay in your sea of consciousness. It's really hard for me to accept becoming such a woman. Elder Heaven Ancestor, after we settle down, I'll find a way to inquire about other places where there are purple mist nefarious lotuses. Otherwise, it will be quite boring for you to stay in my sea of consciousness all the time. Xiao Chen thought for a moment and made a suggestion. Come on, do you think purple mist nefarious lotuses are so common and easy to find? After Elder Sky thought it through, he felt much more relaxed. He said indifferently, "Let's leave it to fate. Anyway, there's still little demon in to accompany me. In addition, you've already collected enough 9 underworld flames primordial spirit. I reckon it won't take long for it to return to normal." Since Elder Heaven Ancestor had said so, Xiaoqin no longer insisted. But in his heart, he secretly decided to ask Gong Xiaoxi and others to help him inquire about it. Maybe there really was a purple mist nefarious lotus in a place that no one had noticed. Chapter 1546. Next, Xiaoqin checked the scene again. Sidu Haoyan was already dead. Although Sidu Qitian had lost a lot of blood, he was still breathing weakly. Xiaoqin and Cheng Menjing quietly discussed for a while and decided to take him along. After entering the immortal cultivation world, they still needed to understand the situation from him. After everything was properly sorted out, Xiaoqin lit a fire and burned the broken wooden house, the damaged electronic equipment, and Sidu Haoyan who had lost his life. This was to prevent anyone from accidentally passing by in the future and causing trouble again. After that, Xiaoqin placed his relatives who had yet to wake up, firmly on the back of the Bei's spirit beast. He dragged Sidu Qitian from behind, while he brought Cheng Menjing and the other women with him, heading in the direction of the Burning Heavens sect. Bei's spirit beast, who had been hiding at the side, had seen everything that had happened before. So when Yu Xiaojiao walked beside it, it did not dare to have any disobedience. Instead, it obediently lowered its head and walked forward. In its heart, it kept reflecting on itself. Why did I watch the show before instead of taking advantage of the chaos to escape? After successfully returning to the Burning Sky faction, Xiaoqin first crippled Sidu Qitian's cultivation, then threw him into prison and had people watch him closely. He planned to deal with him after a period of time. Then he personally concocted some medicinal herbs to aid in recovery, preparing to brew them into medicinal soup and give them to his relatives. It would allow them to wake up as soon as possible. Then Xiaoqin found Gong Xiaoxi and asked him to take over the Deda Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce from Sidu Qitian's hands. Then he continued to send out missions and used manpower to search for traces of the Purple Mist Evil Lotus in the Immortal Cultivation world. The way to enter and exit the Immortal Cultivation world was also found out from Sidu Qitian's mouth. Half a year later, in a large villa in Songning City, Xiaoqin sat leisurely in the hall watching Cheng Menjing and the other women play games. Yu Xiaojiao, with a professional smile on her face, stood obediently on the side. From time to time, she shuttled back and forth in the hall like a butterfly, taking care of the family affairs, big and small, just like a housekeeper. After dealing with the matters in the immortal cultivation world, Xiaoqin took everyone back to Songning City. Although the elders and relatives had returned to their families, Yu Xiaojiao insisted on following Xiaoqin and refused to leave for even a moment. In desperation, Xiaoqin had to leave Yu Xiaojiao in the villa. She volunteered to be a housekeeper and helped Xiaoqin take care of the routine affairs of the villa. However, Yu Xiaojiao also knew that it was impossible for anything to happen between her and Xiaoqin. She was already very satisfied to be able to stay by his side. Therefore, she tried her best to do things so that she could live happily with everyone. "Xiaoqin Appa and beautiful sisters, what do you want to eat tonight? I'll help you buy groceries," Yu Xiaojiao asked with a smile. "Yu Xiaojiao, you're so competent as a housekeeper," Jean Beibei said without turning her head while playing the game with Cheng Menjing and the other women. "Actually, you don't have to ask us every day. Besides, your cooking skills are not worse than brother-in-law Xiaoqian's at all. The taste is super good. So you can decide for yourself." "How can I do that? It took me a lot of effort to convince Xiaoqin Appa to let me be a housekeeper in the villa. What if he kicks me out if I don't do a good job?" Yu Xiaojiao waved her hands and said sincerely. Ever since they came to the villa, Yu Xiaojiao had been in charge of everyone's daily life. She did not put on any airs. Not only did she grant their requests, but she also seemed to be overflowing with happiness at any time. "Absolutely not." Cheng Menjing stared at the TV screen nervously, but she did not forget to reassure Yu Xiaojiao. "Oh, Yu Xiaojiao, just do whatever you want. I call the shots in this villa. No matter how awesome Xiaoqin is, he is still my servant. So he can't fire anyone. Don't worry." "Oh, alright then. I'll go and think about the recipe first. You guys go ahead and play. Remember to call me if you need anything." Yu Xiaojiao smiled shyly and bade farewell to Xiaoqin. Then she ran to the kitchen agilely. Cheng Menjing had just replied with an "oh," when she suddenly frowned and shouted, "Beibei, what are you waiting for? Why don't you heal me now?" I'm about to be killed. Cousin Menjing, you are too weak. Look at how well Tang Tang and Xiao Xiao work together. They are much better than you. Jean Bebe complained, but she secretly extended her hand and patted Tang Tang's game controller when Tang Tang was not paying attention. Hey Bebe, how can you be so shameless? You can't do that. Tang Tang was so shocked that she dropped the game controller. As a result, the game screen soon turned gray. It was obvious that her character had been defeated. Sister Bebe, are you itching for a beating? Do you believe that Tang Tang and I will teach you a lesson together? Without Tang Tang's support, Xiao Xiao soon failed too. She immediately pouted and put down the game controller. Grabbing Tang Tang's hand, she stood up and ran behind Jean Bebe, tickling her hard. Stop tickling. Stop tickling. Bebe knows that it's wrong. Cousin Xiaoqin, Cousin Menjing, come and help me. Jean Bebe could not stop giggling. She laughed so hard that she could not catch her breath. The two enormous mounds on her chest were waving in front of Xiao Chen's eyes. He could not help but swallow when he saw that. You deserve it. Let's see if you dare to mess around again in the future. I will not save you. Cheng Menjing rolled her eyes and retorted solemnly. In fact, Cheng Menjing felt rather satisfied that she had won the game. However, such a method was indeed not very honorable. Therefore, she did not intend to participate in it. She simply picked up the drink on the table and enjoyed the torture of Jean Bebe by the two girls while drinking. Looking at the few girls who were in a mess in front of him, Xiao Qin shrugged helplessly. Naturally, it was not appropriate for him to intervene in the women's war. Therefore he pretended that he saw nothing and walked to Xin Jingxian, who was playing mahjong nearby. Massaging her shoulders softly, he asked with a smile, "How is it? How's the game going?" "Oh, I'm too unlucky today. I'm basically the one who is playing the game. Also, my hand is terrible. Look at my terrible cards. Why don't you give me an idea? Which one should I play next?" Xin Jingxian moaned in comfort after being massaged by Xiao Chen's warm palms. Chapter 1547. Xin Jingxian raised her head and glanced at Xiao Chen's handsome face. Her heart was filled with happiness. She didn't expect that she could still live with Menjing and Xiao Chen peacefully after going through so many hardships. "Oh, actually, I don't really know how to play mahjong. How about I play this?" Xiao Chen scratched his head and pointed at a mahjong tile. Xiao Chen didn't use his divine sense to look at the cards of the other three families. It was unnecessary and he was too lazy to do so. So he just pointed at a tile. "All right, I'll listen to you." Xin Jingxian nodded with a smile on her face. She picked up the mahjong tile and slammed it on the table. She shouted, 30,000. "Oh, I won. Eehee, thank you, Boss Xin. Little brother Xiao Chen is really a lucky star." "Eh? I think I won too. Shuang Shuang, help me take a look. Am I right? Let me see. Yes, don't worry. You can push it down. I won too, hee. Xie Fei, Lin Ke, and Lu Shuang pushed the mahjong tiles in front of them onto the table. The three of them looked at Xin Jingxian at the same time and extended their palms upwards, preparing to ask for the gambling stake. Then they stared at Xiao Chen with a sinister smile, rejoicing in his misfortune. "Oh, 3 shots in 1 shot. Xiao Chen, did you do it on purpose?" Xin Jingxian was instantly dumbfounded. She patted Xiao Chen lightly and said coquettishly, "You must have peeked at their cards, then turned around to trick me. What you did was wrong." "I really didn't. I just randomly pointed at one. Who knew it would be so accurate?" Xiao Chen touched his nose awkwardly and defended himself weakly. Looking at the 3 fair palms in front of her, Xin Jingxian glared at Xiao Chen and scolded, "It's all your fault. You made me fire the firecracker. You have to pay for this round." "Oh, all right." Xiao Chen nodded his head in embarrassment. He reached into his pocket and took out a few spirit crystals. In the end, he only took out a few pieces of spirit crystals. He couldn't find any cash for a long time, so he could only smile sheepishly and say, Why don't I use the spirit crystals to pay off the debt first? I'll pay you back when I have cash later." Xin Jingxian tried her best to keep a straight face, but when she saw Xiao Chen's pitiful look, she couldn't help but burst into laughter. Then she waved her hand and said, "Forget it, I was just joking. Look at how poor you are. I'll just pay myself." Xie Fei covered her mouth and laughed, shaking her head as she glared at Xiao Chen. Lin Ke and Lu Shuang whispered in each other's ears for a while, their gazes occasionally drifting towards Xiao Chen. It was unknown what they were talking about, but Lu Shuang started giggling, while Lin Ke's face turned slightly red, and she punched Xiaochen unwillingly. Xiaochen was about to ask Lu Shuangshuang what they were talking about when Shen Jingxian suddenly pointed to the backyard and said, "Oh right, Hong Zhu and Hong Yin seem to have had a little conflict just now. Why don't you go and ask them what happened? You won't be able to help anyway. Instead, you'll cause me to lose money because of you." "No way, the two sisters haven't reconciled yet?" Xiaochen asked in bewilderment. Seeing that Shen Jingxian didn't know the reason, he hurriedly walked toward the backyard. As soon as he entered the yard, Xiaochen saw Hong Zhu and Hong Yin arguing about something. Both sides seemed to be unwilling to give in. Meanwhile, Yi Xiaoya and Song Huawu were standing to the side, trying their best to mediate between the two. "Big sister, how can you say that? These two are clearly an adulterous couple, yet you're still speaking up for them? I really don't know what's going on in your head." Hong Yin angrily pouted and shouted with a flushed face. Her chest was heaving up and down. It was obvious that she was very angry. "I say, did you even read that book properly? Shimin Qing is clearly a very successful businessman. He even solved the employment problems of many middle-aged women. Moreover, a fine bird chooses a good tree to nest in. Pan Jinlian abandoned Wu Dalong and married Shimin Qing for the sake of a better quality of life. What's wrong with that? I think there's something wrong with your worldview." Hong Zhu was not to be outdone. She waved her little fist and argued. You're simply taking things out of context." Hong Yin shook her head in a very unconvinced manner. Just as she was about to continue retorting, Song Huawu hurriedly stopped her and mediated, all right, both of you stop arguing. What's there to argue about such a trivial matter? Since our viewpoints are different, there's no need to discuss it any further. Both of you should calm down." "That's right. Everyone have some juice. It's a good way to cool down on such a hot day. This is fresh orange juice that steward you just squeezed. It's quite delicious." Yi Xiaoya casually picked up 2 glasses of juice from the side and placed them in front of Hong Zhu and Hong Yin. When she saw the 2 women drink the juice, her expression relaxed and she lightly patted her chest. "I say, aren't you two a little too senseless? Is something like this really worth arguing about?" Xiao Qin, who had been listening to the side for a long time, finally understood the reason behind the 2 women's argument. He could not help but chuckle. Rather than saying that the 2 sisters were quarreling, it would be more accurate to say that they were bickering. In any case, the 2 sisters had very different viewpoints, and they would basically have opposite opinions on every matter. Previously, after the 2 of them had untied the knot in their hearts, they would still have minor conflicts from time to time even though they had reconciled. However, it was very rare for them to truly break up because of this. In the past, everyone would surround them and mediate between them. Later on, they had gotten used to it and would only send 2 people to stop the quarrel. "Husband Xiaochen, you've come at the right time. Hurry up and help big sister teach her a lesson. Really, she doesn't even have the slightest sense of right and wrong. I'm so angry." Hong Zhu immediately stood up when he saw Xiaochen walking over. She gently leaned against his shoulder and made a smug face at Hong Yin. Hong Yin rolled her eyes at Xiaochen and shouted in displeasure, "Big sister, how can you be like this? Colluding with outsiders to bully me? Isn't this too unfair?" Xiaochen is not an outsider. He's big sister's official husband. Hong Zhu straightforwardly hugged Xiaochen's arm and said with a grin. However, before she could finish speaking, the melodious sound of the doorbell rang out from outside. Although Yu Xiaojiao was in the kitchen, her ears were very sharp. She was the first to react and appeared behind the door with a whoosh. She first looked through the peephole to see who it was and found that she did not recognize them. She then immediately opened the door. "Hello, 3 beautiful little sisters. I'm Butler Yu. May I ask who you're looking for?" As soon as she opened the door, Yu Xiaojiao revealed a sweet and beautiful smile and asked in a sweet voice. Chapter 1548. Where's Xiaochen? "Sister Saori, I heard from the female ghost that he's already back from the inner martial arts world. Hurry up and get him to come out and see Sister Saori. I miss him so much." "Saori, don't be so rude. We're here as guests. How can you not have any manners? What if he's not here?" Hello Butler Yu. We're Xiaochen's female, sexual friends. We're here to look for him. May I know if Xiaochen is home?" "Oh, he's here. Please come in. Since you're all Xiaochen Appa's friends, there's no need to be so formal." Yu Xiaojiao nodded and invited the 3 of them into the living room. She smiled and said, "Take a seat. I'll go inform Xiaochen Appa." "Alright, would you like something to drink?" There are all kinds of drinks and freshly squeezed juices here. Plain water is fine too. Ling Qinyu Su Chuxia Tian Saori? Why are you all here? Before Yu Xiaojiao could find him, Xiaoqin heard a familiar voice at the door. He walked out from the backyard and looked at the three of them in surprise. He blurted out, "Did something happen?" "Well, my dear husband Xiaoqin, it's great to see you. Sister Saori thought I'd never see you again." Seeing Xiaoqin appear, Tian Suruan jumped up in excitement. She didn't care about the gazes of the other girls at all as she rushed over and hugged Xiaoqin tightly. "Ahem, Saori, mind your image. Can't you see there's someone else here?" Su Chuxia stood in the same spot and tried to dissuade him. Su Chuxia looked calm on the surface, but her emotions were surging. However, due to the surprised looks of the others in the room, she forcefully held it in and did not express it. "I say, Xiaoqin, since you're back, why didn't you come and tell us? We've been living in fear every day. I wonder how you're doing. Isn't that too much? That's not very kind." Ling Qinyu curled her lips and protested unhappily. If Nie Xiaoyu hadn't informed Su Chuxia after returning, they would have thought that something had happened to Xiaoqin. "I'm really sorry. Actually, I was really busy when I first came back. I just settled down recently, so I didn't have time to look for you guys. I made you guys worry," Xiaoqin said apologetically. Tian Soran hugged Xiaoqin tightly for a while before jumping down in satisfaction. She tilted her head and asked, "Husband Xiaoqin, how are your parents? Did you find them?" Xiaoqin pinched Tian Suran's cheeks intimately and nodded. "Don't worry, my parents are fine. They've already returned to the Xiao family and are now helping the family with their business. Actually, a lot of things happened before I found my parents. I'll tell you guys when I have time in the future." As soon as Xiaoqin finished speaking, Yu Xiaojiao walked over with a plate and placed all kinds of fruit drinks in front of the girls. Then she said with a smile, "Appa Xiaoqin and the other girls, please feel free to drink. If you need anything else, just let me know." Okay. Tian Soren nodded and picked up a drink. Then she pulled Xiaoqin and asked, "By the way, husband Xiaoqin, why did you hire a Korean butler?" Yu Xiaojiao is Chinese. It's just that she watches too many Korean dramas, so she likes to call me Appa. Xiaoqin smiled and shook his head. Then he picked up a glass of fruit juice and drank it. After putting down the plate, Yu Xiaojiao slapped her head. Suddenly she remembered that the door was not closed. She quickly walked over and stretched out her hand to close the door. However, she was blocked by a pitch-black umbrella with all kinds of incantations drawn on it. "Who is it?" Yu Xiaojiao's face immediately darkened. Just as she was about to circulate her mental cultivation method and use her essence force, she saw the appearance of the owner of the umbrella. Her expression relaxed a lot, and she revealed her trademark smile. Then she bowed slightly and invited the people outside in. Puzzled, Xiaoqin looked up and saw another 5 girls walking in. The one walking at the front with a black umbrella in her hand was Li Xian'er, who had said that she was going to rebuild the sect by herself. The more androgynous beauty beside her was Xing Gongzi. The two of them were talking about something, and it seemed to be about managing the sect. Behind Li Xian'er and Xing Gongzi were Ling Er and Ling Qianxue, who walked side by side. Beside Ling Er was a girl Xiaoqin could not name, but she looked very familiar. "Classmate Xiao, do you still remember me, your deskmate?" The girl very naturally walked in front of Xiaoqin. With her hands behind her back, she bowed slightly, blinked her beautiful eyes, and asked with a warm smile on her face, "You're Ling Qianxue?" Seeing her like this, Xiaoqin slapped his thigh and finally came to a realization. He immediately called out her name. No wonder he felt that this girl looked quite similar to Ling Er. It turned out that she was his deskmate in school. "Bingo! Xiaoqin, you're right. She's my sister Ling Qianxue. After I confirmed my relationship with Ling Qianxue, I made a trip to Japan. After I found the Sakura group, Sister Ling tried her best to persuade them to disband the group. Then I brought her back." Ling Er intimately hugged Ling Qianxue's shoulder and said with a smile, "Oh, are you talking about tongue twisters? What Ling Qianxue? Ling Qianxue? They all sound the same. And Ling Er and Ling Qinyu, why are they both surnamed Ling? Is the Ling family here for a meeting today?" Beibei's head is about to explode. Jean Beibei held her head and shouted. She felt that her head was as big as a bucket and she did not feel well at all. She could not understand what they were talking about at all. "Haha, actually my name is Ling Qianxue, and this beauty is Ling Er's younger sister, Ling Qianxue. As for Ling Qinyu, she is my biological sister." Years ago. Ling Qianxue smiled gently and explained the relationship carefully. However, Jean Bebe was still very confused after listening to her for a long time. She blinked in confusion, feeling that she did not understand at all. Let's explain it later when we have the chance. Lysianer waved her hands and raised the black umbrella that she had been holding in her hand. She shouted, "Now we are in Brother Zhao's villa. You can come out now." After that, Lysianer opened the black umbrella. The spell that was painted with silver powder on the black umbrella suddenly flashed. Coldness spread out in the hall. Then, a slightly transparent ghost showed up from the umbrella and landed on the ground lightly. Chapter 1549. Brother Xiaoqin, it's been a long time. Nie Xiaoyu stood still and nodded at Xiaoqin. She then greeted the other girls one by one. "Oh, it's you, Xiaoyu. I thought our villa was haunted. We haven't seen each other for a long time after you left with Xian, Xiaoqin smiled faintly and looked at the black umbrella in Lysianer's hand. He said with great interest, "However, this umbrella is quite convenient. This way you can walk around in the day." Of course, this black umbrella is a treasure passed down from the ancient Five Elements faction. I don't use it easily. Giving it to Xiaoyu is making the best use of it. Lysianer waved the black umbrella and said proudly. At this time the whole living room was very lively. The girls who were familiar with each other but hadn't seen each other for a long time were holding hands and chatting intimately. The huge living room was full of chatter and laughter. "Alright. Su Chuxia, did you bring Invincible back?" After chatting with Su Chuxia and Tian Yoshi for a while, Cheng Minjing suddenly slapped her forehead. She remembered that she had left Invincible in a pet shop near Lanqing University. She couldn't help but blame herself. She had been back for so long and had forgotten about it. "Yes, we brought it back and left it outside. It should be playing with that big white horse now. I don't know why, but the two of them seem to have a good relationship," Su Chuxia said with a smile as she pointed outside the door. "Woof woof woof. Get down here. Hurry up and get down." Just as Su Chuxia finished speaking, a series of complaints and barks came from outside the door. Everyone looked at each other and decided to follow Xiaoqin out to see what was going on. As soon as they stepped out, they saw Invincible riding steadily on the back of the white spiritual beast. It even raised its head and howled like a wolf. This strange yet harmonious scene made everyone laugh so hard they bent over. Stupid dog, stupid dog. How dare a low-level spiritual beast like you ride on the back of a high-level spiritual beast like me? Why aren't you getting out of here?" Bai Zhe flew into a rage and twisted its body with all its might. However, when it realized that the invincible dog was still sitting on its back without moving an inch, it gritted its teeth in anger. Even its mane had become a mess from the shaking. Just as everyone was laughing non-stop, a Rolls-Royce Phantom slowly drove over from afar and stopped outside the villa with a creak. 2 men and a woman got out of the car. When the woman saw Xiaoqin, she couldn't wait to run over. "Xiaoqin, where the hell have you been? Why did you take so long to come back? I can't even find you." The woman grabbed Xiaoqin's collar and tugged fiercely a few times. However, she immediately stopped and lowered her head to look at his lower body. She asked with a puzzled expression, "Speaking of which, is that part of yours healed? If you don't feel better, you must tell me. I will accompany you to see a doctor." "Sister, how many times have I told you? Xiaoqin is fine. There's nothing wrong with him. Why don't you believe me?" Wang Fantian, who was following behind the woman, shook his head helplessly. His sister was so capricious. She had to repeatedly confirm that there was nothing wrong with Xiaoqin before she was willing to be at ease. "Oh, why do you sound like you know better? Have you tried my boss's thing?" Zhu Xiong laughed evilly. He pinched his nose and spoke in a strange tone. Then he closed the car door and walked in front of everyone. "Try your head." Xiaoqin knocked on Zhu Xiong's head angrily. Then he turned around and said solemnly, "Lan Xinxin, I will tell you clearly again. This is also the last time. I really have nothing wrong with me. You really don't have to take that matter to heart. Moreover, it's not your fault, so don't worry about it." But Lan Xinxin was still a little worried. Just as she was about to ask, Wang Fantian pulled her to the side and whispered a few words in her ear. Her eyes suddenly lit up. She blushed and nodded. She didn't say anything more. She even looked at Xiaoqin shyly. After comforting Lan Xinxin, Wang Fantian turned to Xiaoqin and said, "This time, we came to tell you that Zhu Xiong and I have arranged all the breakfast shops. They are still in the original morning market street. You can choose an auspicious day and you can open it at any time." "Oh. Then let's go to the morning market street now and see if there is anything else that needs to be prepared," Xiaoqin nodded. There was nothing else to do, so he brought everyone to have a look. Naturally, the girls had no objections. They got in their own cars or their friends' cars and prepared to set off for the morning market street. Xiaoqin had just taken 2 steps when he suddenly remembered something. He turned to Xing Gongzi and asked, "By the way, did you arrange for Situ Qitian to do something before? He said he would give me a surprise, but I haven't gotten the chance yet." "Hehe, there is naturally a surprise. You will see it soon. He is living a good life now." Xing Gongzi smiled mysteriously and deliberately said mysteriously. Xiaoqin shrugged and didn't care too much. He got in the car and took the girls in the direction of the morning market street. Ever since he learned the ins and outs of Situ Qitian's story and crippled his cultivation, Xiaoqin didn't care about his life or death anymore. However, he had to keep a close eye on this guy who was full of evil tricks, lest he found an opportunity to return to his original state and run off to other places to run amok. The morning market street had been renovated in the past few years. Now it was no longer full of stalls like before. Instead, there were 2 neat rows of shops along the street. It looked a lot more standardized and more hygienic than before. Xiaoqin visited the brand new environment of the morning market street and recalled the scene when he set up the stall with Tang Tang and Qing Menjing. It felt like a lifetime had passed and he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. "Boss, what do you think?" Zhu Xiong followed Xiaoqin and asked very attentively. The decoration is quite good." Xiaoqin's thoughts were interrupted, so he said casually, "But we are making breakfast, so we can't increase the price of the things we sell just because the level of the shop has gone up. Otherwise, ordinary people can't afford it. We still have to make it simple and cheap. It doesn't matter if we make less or no money." "Come on, now who doesn't know that your Xiao family is the largest consortium in Songning City, and the martial arts world calls you the Supreme Cultivation family? Even our Qing family is ashamed of our inferiority." Qing Menjing couldn't help but glare at Xiaoqin and said sourly, "Not to mention making less money. Even if you lose money to make breakfast, it's not a problem. You don't lack that money anyway." Chapter 1550. Looking at the brand new kitchenware that was still outside of the shop, Qing Menjing had mixed feelings too. Although her cooking skills were not very good, she still missed the days when she had to get up early and return late to sell breakfast. "All right. Everything else is fine. Now, as long as the name of the shop is decided, we can officially open for business. However, let's think about the name together." Tang Tang extended her arm naturally and touched the oil pan that she was familiar with. She could not help but put on a sweet smile. "I think we should call it Qingji. It has been the same name in the past. It's sort of a continuation." Qing Menjing was the first to propose. No, it's too low-key. I think it's better to call it Rich Jean Bebe's Nutritious Breakfast Shop. It sounds so cool." Jean Bebe immediately vetoed it. Then she proposed her own idea, waving her hands in excitement. "How can we do that? The name sounds like a nouveau riche. It's too tacky. Is there any nutrition in it at all?" Qing Menjing waved her hands and glared at Jean Bebe grumpily. The two of them could not come to an agreement for a moment. A few girls next to them tried to persuade them, but as time went by, they decided to support the other side themselves. All right. Stop arguing." Xiaoqin rubbed his temples, feeling a headache. After thinking for a moment, he suggested, "How about this? The name of the shop will be Invincible Super Rich Jin Chengji Tangji." Everyone was dumbfounded as they listened to Xiaoqin recite a long list of names. They all started with the women's surnames. Only Zhu Xiong was diligently taking notes at the side. "No, our shop is not big enough. If the name is too long, it won't fit on the board. If we really want such a name, we will have to buy the entire street." Wang Fengtian frowned. The name was too ridiculous. Before Xiaoqin replied, a chubby figure pushed the door open and walked out of the shop. He said in delight, "Master, I heard everything from inside. I think the name you mentioned is quite good, so I'll choose this one. If worst comes to worst, we can just buy the entire morning market street. It just so happens that we have a lot of people working. As the eldest senior, I can also run a knife-cut noodle shop by myself." Tui, go to hell." Gong Xiaoxi also hurriedly ran out of the shop. He kicked the fat man to the ground and shouted angrily, "How dare you call yourself the eldest senior brother? I have formally acknowledged master as my master, so I should be the eldest senior brother." Xiaoqin looked at the two clowns speechlessly. After Gong Xiaoxi kicked the smiling Maitreya Buddha to the ground, he looked at him with a bitter expression and said hopefully, Master, didn't you say that I'm your first disciple? Why is there a guy as fat as a ball in front? Before Xiaoqin could answer, the smiling Mithra patted the dust off his body and stood up. He cleared his throat and said seriously, in theory I should be Master's eldest disciple because I'm the first to learn how to make knife-cut noodles from Master. You definitely can't compete with me, hee. Alright. Don't argue, you two. You have to do this every day, aren't you tired? Xing Gongzi interrupted their quarrel, looked around and asked with a strange expression, didn't I arrange a waiter for you before? Where is he? Oh, Master's wife, you're talking about that good-for-nothing Sidu Qitian, right? He's making a fire inside. The smiling Mithra pointed to the man squatting by the stove at the back of the shop, touched his belly and said casually. Upon seeing this, the group of people also filed into the store. Hongzhu stared at Sidu Qitian's extremely clumsy appearance with great displeasure, then turned his head and said, Husband Xiaoqin, look at this old thing, his legs are a little too weak, he's not even as good as those disciples of yours. Why don't you just kill him? That way we can save a lot of food and not waste resources here. Don't. Sidu Qitian had been slacking off when no one was paying attention, but when he heard Hongzhu's words, his entire body trembled, and his movements became much more agile. As he lit the fire, he said with a flattering smile, don't look down on me just because I'm old, my legs are very agile. Especially when it comes to lighting fires, that's the best. Back in Awakening Heaven sect, my biggest hobby was to act as a cook, and even those experienced servants didn't burn as much as I did. Alright, don't put on an act. Hurry up and make the fire a little bigger. Xiaoqin waved his hand impatiently, motioning for everyone to sit down in the shop and said, Sliced Mithra, when the cook gets the fire ready, cut a few bowls of noodles. Everyone has been busy the whole day and they're all hungry. No problem, leave it to me. Everyone just wait and see. The sliced Mithra happily agreed, then poured a basin of water into the pot, and began to knead the dough with all his might. Gong Xiaoxi on the side, prepared all kinds of seasonings. Clang. Just as everyone was excitedly sitting down to eat the noodles, the shop's door was suddenly kicked open, and 3 punks swaggered in. The leader was a guy with dyed purple hair, and behind him were 2 subordinates with dyed green and yellow hair. They looked colorful, almost like macaws. Who's the boss here? Hurry up and come out, we have to pay the protection fee. Otherwise, don't even think about opening the shop smoothly. As soon as the purple-haired punk entered the door, he shouted loudly, picking his ears. However, when he saw the room full of beautiful women, he was immediately dumbfounded. He thought that he had come to the wrong place, so he looked back at the shop's door. This was the breakfast shop that had not opened yet. Boss, the girls here are not bad. It seems that we can have some meat today, all of them are good stuff. The green-haired punk stared straight ahead, licked his lips and shouted with an evil smile. Yes. And every one of them is the best. Too beautiful. It's just that these men are too much of a hindrance, so we might as well send them away first, and then slowly choose our own. The yellow-haired punk's throat made a gulp sound, and he kept rubbing his palms, looking a little impatient. Mother****, how dare you come here to collect protection fees? Are you ***king tired of living? Smiling Mithra, who was kneading the dough, suddenly exploded. He picked up the kitchen knife and was about to rush over, but he was stopped by Xiaoqin. ***CKU, damn fatty, you think you're so great just because you have a knife? I have one too. The purple-haired punk snorted coldly, and immediately took out a butterfly knife from behind his back, and played a few tricks in his hand, then said coldly with a gloomy face. Chapter 1551. Kid, you shouldn't play with a knife like that. Xiaoqin smiled faintly and stood up. With a slight movement, he suddenly appeared in front of the purple-haired hooligan. With a slight movement of his arm, the butterfly knife appeared in his hand in the next moment. The purple-haired gangster looked down at his empty hand and could not help but be shocked. His 2 subordinates looked at each other and finally realized that something was wrong. The shop was not as simple as it looked. The 3 of them looked around and found that everyone sitting around them was like a wild beast in the jungle. Their bodies emitted a dangerous aura. Even the beautiful and alluring women had a cold light in their eyes, giving off a sense of distance that could not be defiled. Realizing that the situation was not good, the 3 gangsters turned around and wanted to run away. However, as soon as they turned around, they felt the road in front of them was shrouded by a huge black shadow. The three hoodlums looked up and saw an extremely tall and burly man standing in front of them with a face full of anger. Behind them, a voice that they would never forget for the rest of their lives rang out. Wang Fantian closed the door. Don't let anyone out. Shaved noodles Methreya. Make 3 bowls of shaved noodles immediately. Add more chili and mustard. Oh no, just chili and mustard. 3 kids, congratulations on being the first customers of this shop. As the owner of this shop, I will definitely treat you well. I guarantee that you will remember this for the rest of your lives. The 3 gangsters were terrified. Just when they were ready to fight to the death, the kitchen door suddenly opened with a squeak. Then a red-haired man walked out with a pot of chili and asked respectfully, Boss Xiao, the chili oil is fried. Where should I put it? Oh, just right. Pour 3 bowls for each of them. They can only leave after they finish it. Xiaoqun pointed at the 3 gangsters and sneered. Boss Red Hair. Why are you here? This place is full of beautiful women. The purple-haired gangster was delighted at first. After shouting, he reacted and asked in surprise, Why are you carrying chili oil? Seeing the red-haired gangster's face full of fear, the purple-haired gangster was dumbfounded. His 2 subordinates were also full of surprise. They looked at each other and did not know what to say. Damn, I was looking for you 3 idiots. Hurry up and help me cut the chili. The red-haired gangster did not notice the tense atmosphere in the outer hall. He put down the chili oil and shouted. However, just as he finished instructing, Red Hair suddenly recalled Xiao Chen's earlier order. Seeing his 3 subordinates' panic-stricken appearance, he pondered for a moment and understood the reason. He scolded them for failing to live up to his expectations and forced each of them to pour a bowl of chili oil into their mouths. After forcing them to apologize to everyone present, he dragged the 3 of them towards the kitchen. When the girls saw this, they could not help but laugh. The living room was filled with joy. When they saw this, Cheng Menjing suddenly she stood up and shouted in the direction, Shishing XT. Hurry and cook the ingredients for the noodles. This time, I hope it won't be like what happened in the world of cultivators, reversing the order and exploding things. Otherwise, I will let Xiaoqun beat you to death. Okay. Don't worry and leave it to me. There will definitely be no problem. Shishan Dunyu responded and poked its head out of the kitchen to greet everyone. It was still holding a spoon and a rolling pin in its hand. Its originally dark and swarthy face was covered in flour, making it look very funny. Big sister Menjing, don't worry. The noodles can't explode. Kerlin said weakly. However, before she finished speaking, there was a sudden exclamation from the kitchen. Damn. Shishing, you idiot, you can't let this thing near the flame. Damn it. Hurry up and move it away. If it is lit, it will be over. Bang! The chaotic roars had just sounded when the kitchen exploded. A black smoke rose into the air and shrouded the entire kitchen in an instant, giving everyone a fright. Xiaoqun made a prompt decision and quickly locked the kitchen door with his mental power to prevent the black smoke from leaking into the outer hall. Haha! Through the transparent glass window of the kitchen, they saw that the people inside had all turned into black coals. No matter how hard they tried, they could not open the kitchen door. It was a mess. The people in the living room could not help but burst into laughter. End of Volume 3. End of full text. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.